session this morning, and at the end, we had one driver ahead of the field by a mere 4.6 seconds. Alessio Picariello, he bolted on some slick tyres. It was the brave thing to do. But anyhow, that was practice. It's sort of irrelevant. It's all about the drivers getting the feel of the circuit. But now we're going into quick-fire qualifying. First with the GT4 cars, and we will send them out for 2 batches of 15 minutes. But Suzuka is what they have to grab, a circuit that is always famous and much loved by the top drivers around the world. It's a real challenge. It's tight, it's twisty, and it has gradient, which is an ingredient that really makes racing circuits. The drivers love it, and they know if they get it wrong, it's old school, it can bite. There's not a lot of space when you go off the black stuff, and we've seen drivers this morning doing that time and time again in all the various classes here at Suzuka. So it's downhill to turns 1 and 2, then back up through the wonderful S's, and then twisting. And it's a rare circuit in that it crosses under itself. It's almost a figure of 8, but a bit as though it's been squashed by a pair of very strong hands. My name is Bruce Jones, and I'm joined up in the commentary box by Steve Dawson.
Bruce,
Steve Dawson.
Look at those clouds, my goodness me. We've had bad weather forecasts all week, but we've sort of fended it off in the last few days. And then this morning the weather broke, and those lovely floral pictures that we're seeing here got rather dampened in the early hours of today. And that certainly affected the third and final practice session, where we did, as you say, see one driver just explode and really tear it apart. Much better than the rest of the field. And those conditions, though, are drying out.
Drying fast. It's very warm here and humid, as you can imagine, with the amount of rain that has come and is still threatening. But we can see the sky. It's not blue, but it's certainly much brighter than it was earlier. So a little bit of track inspection before the drivers go out. This is a circuit you really want to have one thing or another. You want it to be fully wet or fully dry. And so the drivers are going out, and of course they've already got their book of excuses fully loaded. The damp patch jumped out in front of me. So, just to focus the minds, we have split qualifying. GT4 ahead of GT3. The GT4 runners go out first. Driver 1 in each of the entries will go out. They will do the first qualifying session. They will set the grid for race 1, which is this afternoon. And their co-drivers, driver number 2, will go out in the second session, which starts at 10:02. It's about stringing together. It's not about going crazy. The GT4 runners, we know there are 6 of them. They will start behind the GT3 runners. Obviously, it's a matter of pride, but what we've had some very, very strong runs by one of the Japanese team in the class, BMW Team Studi. Really fantastic runners. Takayuki Kinoshita will lead them out, followed by Sunaka Jukuchu. But certainly this morning, they weren't the fastest of the GT4 runners, but I think it was a question of not making a fool of yourself, because it was very, very tricky conditions, and there's no prize for giving your mechanics a very, very busy morning. 2 Mercedes entered by Team iRace.win. That's 199, which will be started off by Kyo Chang and then handed over to Alan Yeo. So Alan Yeo would very much like a car to play with, so for Kyo Chang, no pressure at all. Keep it on the black stuff. And in fact, as we talk about the fantastic circuit, the clouds are getting greyer and greyer. Fans will have brought rainwear with them. The clouds moving around a bit of a breeze coming in, so I think we can guarantee one thing here, apart from the fact it's a fantastic circuit. It's also going to be different almost every lap, because the weather is going to keep on changing, Steve.
You talked about the gradient changes, and quite often on a two-dimensional TV screen it's difficult to see those, but our cameras are quite nicely positioned. You can see the uphill and the downhill, and it really is exciting for these drivers, and this wonderful S-curve series that they go through. It's a thrill for them. I talked to a couple of them yesterday, and to a man, they're all very thrilled about the prospect of tearing around this track at top speed.
Well, I think a lot of circuits provide the drivers with a challenge to a certain extent, but they focus more on how the car is going. Here, the circuit is such a challenge in its own right. It's about how they're going, how they cope with the monster that lies ahead. Number 77, Craft Bamboo Racing, Frank Hugh, Jean-Marc Merlin, really, really well placed right at the sharp end of the GT4 rankings. They're second at the moment, but they'll be first out onto the circuit. So, and it must be said, as you can see, another Mercedes in the background from Team iRace.win. The AMG Mercedes, very, very popular in GT4 form. If you're new to GT racing, we've got the main runners are in GT3 there in the background on the left of the screen. Less flamboyant in terms of the size of their wings and the splitters under the front of the car are the GT4 runners. It's a way into GT racing. It's blossoming all around the world. This year is the first time in Blancpain GT World Challenge Asia that they have separate qualifying, which is actually really fair, because otherwise when they were combined in previous years they had to spend all their time looking in their mirrors, because the GT3 cars are a whole heap faster.
Yeah, it can get chaotic. The 199 car that came through didn't have a very good third free practice session. They were bottom of the time list, but as this track dries up, conditions changing, and that'll be an advantage or a disadvantage for the various teams taking part. One thing's for sure, Bruce, everyone who's coming after these initial 6 cars will be looking to see how quickly and how helpful they are in continuing to dry out the track.
Yeah, they would do that very much indeed. So, but with only 6 of them going around, they're not do that much drying. Yes, when the GT3 cars come out, they have more downforce, so that'll suck a bit more water out of the surface. But all along, in what is still a humid day, the track is fortunately still drying.
Yeah, we saw some lovely plumes at the beginning of the third and final practice.
Just looking at number 89. Absolute Racing, they're coming to play in GT4. Great to have another car in the class. Absolute Racing have got 4 cars in GT3, 2 Porsches and 2 Audis. But the 89 entry, Mark Williamson, the Australian racer, will lead out, and then he'll hand over to his Indonesian teammate, Anderson Tanoto. So great to have them on board. And Mark Williamson, a driver with an enormous amount of experience, dating back a very long way. Single-seaters by and large in his early days, but like a lot of drivers, GT Racing, as it grows with the SRO Group taking it all around the world, it is a place that a lot of drivers are having almost like a second career. So it's great to have Mark Williamson back out to play. So first lap out of the pits, don't expect any wonderful lap times, because it's the out lap. And then, of course, they have to wind it up. As I said, 15 minutes. We've already 2 of those have already passed. So it's about keeping it nice and clean, keeping it on the island. It really was an island this morning. We talked about the gradient just coming in this morning, the amount of water just pouring off even flat roads. It was extraordinary at about 6:45 this morning.
Yeah, there were sections of the track where there certainly was standing water, and as the cars sped through them, it was all shot up into the air. But as you can see, this is the first look you guys at home will be getting of the gradient changes here. Wonderful elevation changes right the way around this track. Provides a very varied challenge for the drivers.
And of course, anything you see on TV that looks steep, it really is, because TV always flattens it. Yeah. I always thought the ultimate thing was the first time I went to Monaco. Boy, did my calves hurt as I walked up the hill from the Sand towards Casino Square. I knew it was a hill, but it was way more than I realised. But proper gradient change, and now sweeping down to start a flying lap goes Frank Hugh in the 77 Mercedes down towards, sorry, that's 199, that's Kia Chang. Cars back to front. Frank Hugh is just ahead on the circuit. So out lap completed. Now start to wind it up. Keep it tidy, keep it clean. Turns 1 and 2, effectively a double apex right-handed. Then you start the sweep up the hill. If you get it wrong into what is turn 3, where the Mercedes is approaching now, you'll carry on being wrong through turns 4, 5, 6 and 7 in no time at all. Get it wrong, the start of the sweepers. Climbing sharply behind the paddock. Our commentary position just on top left of screen there, just above pit entrance. And then the track flattens out a little bit. There's an access road underneath that. They sweep round, and now they can start to think, the drivers start to think about the Degners. Great corners that lead you towards the underpass, that rare feature at Suzuka where the track crosses under the return leg. You'll see that shortly. But it's about carrying your speed. But also when it's been raining, it's about staying off those curbs. Moisture hangs around in the curbing, and the last thing you want is a little bit of wet paint under your tyres. And round you go. There is the cross over, or in this case, cross under. And Kia Chang up towards the hairpin, so looking down at this point, he's thinking brake, keep the car to the right hand side of the circuit, and choose your moment to turn in. Go in a bit early, a little bit of understeer there, car not wanting to get any grip. Again, indicative there, Steve, of a greasy track, a track that's had rain, looks dry but isn't. What's
tantalising about these elevation changes is they almost always seem to come downhill and into a nice turn, so it's a real decision for the driver. Do they give it everything they've got? They've got to ease on the brakes pretty quickly once they come out of them.
And don't forget, when they were on the circuit early this morning, conditions very, very different indeed. So each time they're out on the circuit, something, each lap will be different. They will be drying it out. Steve and I have been talking about that, but 6 cars in GT4 will have space to play. That is the advantage. So waiting for the first flying lap, and the first one to the start-finish line should be Frank Hugh. He is, they are through turn 130R, that fearsome corner. Braking hard for that final chicane. It's had many names over the years, many incidents, most famously Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna clashing there in their McLarens in 1988. End of the World Championship, but a nice clean sweep through the final corner. 5.815 kilometres, the Suzuka circuit. Every single centimetre is a challenge. And the BMW, for BMW Team Studi, only now coming out with allowing themselves only 9.5 minutes on the track, which will include an outlap.
probably means that they had a little bit of a problem. You wouldn't think they'd leave it so late. Almost every element of the driver's line is pretty dry now. Don't think that the moisture is going to cause particular problems, particularly as this session goes on. But those dark clouds that we do occasionally catch a glimpse of, somewhat threatening still.
Absolutely so, but don't forget when they're out on the track this morning, this was a track that was not only wet, it had been blasted clear of all the rubber that had been put down through yesterday's practice, and drivers love to have that rubber on the circuit. It gives them the extra grip, and they always say by about the third day of a race meeting, the track's just coming to where they want it to be. They're so greedy, aren't they, looking for all that extra grip. They should just jolly well get on with it. But no, it's just fantastic. So, in fact, Setiawan Santoso has the best lap so far, 2 minutes 16.599. He's in one of the two Team iRace.win Mercedes. He's sharing that with Ringo Chong. Ringo will go in the second session, but Indonesian racer Setiawan Santoso top by 2.1 seconds faster than Frank Yu and Kyo Chang, who will be looking at his third, but still waiting for flying laps from Mark Williamson. We saw him going out in the 89 Audi from Absolute Racing. Takayuki Kinoshita in the BMW Team Studi, the M4, we saw that leaving the pits. And also number 11, which is the GTO Racing with TTR entry. Their Mercedes has yet to put a time on the board with Brian Lee.
To give you an indication of how these times shape up, the fastest time in that wet session this morning was 2:05. The quickest times in free practice 2 and 1 yesterday were much closer to the 2-minute mark. We had a 2:01.8. So of course, some way off the pace.
Yeah, but what we have to look at there, Steve, is the pace of the fastest pace of a GT4 runner, which was 2 minutes 15.3. So we're a second away from that, and the driver who set that time yet to cross the start-finish line to do a flying lap, just about to complete his out lap. Setiawan Santoso. Now Frank Yu has closed to within 0.1 of a second, 0.132 to be precise, so very, very close at the top. Setiawan Santoso from Frank Yu is the 1:11, looking at it now, so Setiawan really starting to wind it up. And again, the confidence is coming. You can see earlier in the session we saw drivers understeering out of the hairpin. Now they're just getting a bit more balance and a bit more bite from the front end. This is the chicane at the very end of the lap, just the right-hander downhill. Of course, it's Suzuka. You have to have gradient, so you wind it up and just want to get your entry right so you can have that wonderful sweep. And in the race, it's a very different corner when you're trying to hunt down a car ahead. Will Setiawan improve? Yes, he does. He takes off 0.6 of a second, so 2 minutes 16.070. Mark Williamson, his first flying lap in the Absolute Racing Audi, slots into third place. So 3 cars covered by 0.7 of a second. Let's see what Takayuki Kinoshita can do. And certainly he and Brian Lee in the number 11 GTO Racing Mercedes, very, very quick indeed. So waiting for the time from Takayuki and his Takayuki Kinoshita and his BMW. So strong, but Mark Williamson really starting to wind it up. Great to have Absolute Racing playing in GT4. Car looks great. We've been talking just off air about race liveries. That's one that stands out. Very, very clean. You could say there could be more writing on the side, but from my point of view, I like big, clean, bold sweeps. It helps, and particularly on a grey day, if you've got a black car and a blue car, quite hard to work them out. But with those big yellow swathes up over the bonnet and around the flanks, thank you very much. Good job, Absolute Racing.
Yeah, there's some very pretty pieces of livery going to go around the track later on today. We'll pick them out as we see them, some nice ones. We've got photographs in front of us here, and we've been picking out our favourites before we came on air.
Quite sad, really, but just shows we're real fans. So, where is the movement coming from? Very, very close between Frank Yu and Mark Williamson. Williamson, looking at him now, he'll come down. Is he going to improve on this lap? Most certainly is. Could even go top, which just shows that he hasn't lost any of his skill. Goes into second place. He's, oh, dearie me, 0.03 of a second behind. So it's 2 minutes 16.070. And Mark Williamson there in the 89 Audi, 2 minutes 16.1 seconds precisely. Still waiting for a tie from Takayuki Kinoshita. He's done his out lap. He's on his flying lap. And you know what? He's already fastest of all in the BMW Team Studi entry. Number 81, we'll get a look at that. An incredible livery on that car. It makes you feel as though you have to adjust your screen to take it all in. It's like a tapestry or a crochet all over that car. White, blue, red and black. Very, very crisp indeed. So just wait. The time is coming from Takayuki Kinoshita. Any other change at the top? Frank Yu just improves in 1 and then 1.99. That's Kyo Chang. He's slowest of those with a flying lap, just under 2 seconds down on the pace, 1.896 seconds down, but waiting for those times are coming in on our timing screen. If it's green, it means it's that driver's personal best in the sector. If it's pink, it's overall fastest time, and Kinoshita has 2 of those in sector 1 and sector 2, waiting for him to complete the third and final sector, almost invariably going to go top, and he comes through very close to the pit board, maybe short-sighted, wants to see his pit board, no, not at all, he's crossed the line, 2 minutes, 14.686 seconds, 1.4 seconds faster than the rest. Yeah. That's how you do it.
Pink or purple in every one of the sectors there, so a super lap there from Kinoshita, and it goes to the top of the screen, as you say. It's his mark that everyone else will be chasing now.
This team, super confident. We commented that it was a 15-minute first qualifying session. They came out with 5.5 minutes already expended, but they just knew one flying lap would be enough because, of course, Takayuki knows the circuit very well indeed. Japanese racer on home ground, absolutely starred here 12 months ago. Great to have a Japanese doubleheader. Next round of the championship will be at Fuji. One lap, job done, back it off. Maybe they forgot to put enough fuel in. Let's keep that quiet.
Chance for a rest here, don't want to overdo it. A lot of work to come this weekend.
Yeah, and all these drivers are fully aware heroics can lead to things going wrong, and when your teammate has only got a 7-minute gap before he takes over, you do not want to put the car off the island. So really a little bit of caution, but for Kinoshita that looks like pole is safe. Looking for any other change, it's still incredibly close behind between Setiawan Santoso in the number 111 Team I Race.win Mercedes and the driver we're looking at now. Is it another flying lap from Mark Williamson? Yes, it's a flyer, but he's 4-5 tenths of a second down on his best. Stays in third place, but really making a very, very impressive splash as he joins the championship.
A little over 3 minutes for these drivers to improve upon their position in this first part of qualifying round on the Saturday.
Well, Brian Lee has finally set his flying lap, left it late. He's moved into 5th place. He's done the out lap, the flying lap, but he's 3 seconds down on the ultimate pace, just ahead of Kyo Chang. But I expect a little bit more next time around. In fact, as I say, that first sector, an improvement from Brian Lee. Is he going to be able? He's got to find a full second to move ahead of Frank Yu, but he's improved in first sector and the second sector. A lot of the rivals actually starting to peel off the circuit. They've done their job. Their teammate awaits. They need to take over the warmed-up cockpit of these cars. Certainly doesn't take much to get heat into these cars. Great big front-engine Mercedes. You can imagine all that heat coming back into the cabin. Who else is moving and changing? Well, we've seen the BMW team Studi entry, number 81, BMW cruising back, Takayuki Kinoshita, but an improvement from Setiawan Santoso. Very good last time round, fastest of anybody in the third sector. He's got down to 0.8 of a second away, so he's stretched ahead of Mark Williamson. So good early pace from Setiawan Santoso for Team iRace.win, and now winding it up while the sister car is in the pit lane. Here is number 11, this is Brian Lee, again very late out on the track, like the BMW team Studi entry. See the GT4 sticker on the bumper. If you look at the rear shot of a GT3 Mercedes, a lot more wing to be seen. But these cars have to be driven with great precision. Not as powerful as a GT3. You have to really manage the speed of the cars and keep it very, very well balanced. Nice entry line. And again, he's taking the tight line close to the pit wall. How much will that improve his position? Well, it's improved his time, but he needed to find a second. He's found half a second. And the checkered flag, well, he's got time for another lap. 1 minute, will be out in 1.5 minutes, so he can get round. The checkered flag will greet him. Any other changes at the top? No, it's Setiawan Santoso, that good lap to move him to within 0.8 of a second. And now let's have a look. 111. Here is Santoso. He's the flip colour scheme where he has yellow on his car, his teammate's car has green, and vice versa to differentiate between the two. iRace.win Mercedes, charcoal grey underneath, but this looks like a car that's being cruised back to the pits, it must be said. So it looks as though we are approaching the end of that session. I cannot see anybody toppling Takayuki Kinoshita. I think the job has been done. I think that is another pole for Kinoshita. And had it all looking very much under control. There. How's that for a livery?
That's complex, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I'm sure it means something, but it's one of those ones that on a bright day it stands out rather more because the white comes through. But as you can see, it's quite a grey day. It's a warm day. If you're watching anywhere else in the world that's not very warm, I have to just explain it's very humid here. But certainly 12 months ago, I'd say it was a good 10 degrees Celsius hotter. It was very, very hot and humid, whereas now it's warm and humid. But tidy session there, and half the runners back in the pits. There is the car that's got pole for GT4 for this afternoon's race, and teammate Tsunaku Jukuchu will take that over for qualifying session number 2.
I was here 4 weeks ago, and I got absolutely scorched. We had blue sky and nothing but blue sky, and the sun was very, very strong, very hot indeed. As you say, these clouds provide an extra humidity. It's going to be hard work for the drivers, particularly once we get into the full length of the race. Conditions are going to be difficult.
But there we are, the official end of the session. In fact, looks so Brian Lee continues to improve. Everyone else is parked up. Checkered flag is now out. It'll be awaiting him. Improves in Sector 1. Not so good as he was the previous time in Sector 2. Maybe able to complete the lap and Can he find half a second, which is what he still needs to go ahead of Frank Yu? I think that might be a little bit beyond him, but let's not judge. He's run a very different qualifying session to the majority of the others. The other team that came out late was BMW Team Studi, but their car, middle of your screen, you can see tail into the garage. Those cars, of course, coming out to play after a 7-minute break will start all over again. And I think you always have, if a car comes out late, it tends to be late out in the second session as well. You need that breathing time, whatever you have left. Has anyone got anything left? Well, still Mark Williamson charging out around the circuit in the Absolute Racing Audi. He's done a series of laps in the 2-minute 16s. He's been faster than ever before through Sector 1, through Sector 2. Not quite an improvement. Is Sector 3 listening to the engine note in the background? I think he's just coming around the final corner. No improvement yet. Another lap, very close to his best. In fact, he was only less than a tenth of a second down on his best. So, for Mark Williamson, new to the championship, and this car new to the series as well. What was important wasn't just good speed; it was good consistency. And the driver of Mark's experience started in Formula Ford in Australia back in 1987, so it goes a long way back. Then had a long break, came back to GTs in the late 90s, another break, and in recent years has just started to dabble again. In fact, pretty much after going into the Audi R8 LMS Cup last year, that was his return after about 7 years away. Good to have him back on board. Competent job.
That gap between Kinoshita and Santoso represents the biggest gap for any of the drivers. So it was a good lap by Kinoshita. He'll be pleased with his work in that first session. Looking forward to later in the day, I'm sure. Yeah,
and I think Setiawan Santoso seems to really be getting into his stride now. So he'll be very pleased with that second place, because certainly when you join a championship, you know what the standards are, and you have to see where you land. And he's going further forward with every round. So for the Indonesian racer, he will be, that's a good point. He'll hand it over to his teammate Ringo Chong, who has more experience with these cars, and see what Ringo can do. But for all the drivers, that's them until the race this afternoon. And of course, the drivers in qualifying session 1 set the grid positions for this afternoon's race, and their teammates who are taking over now will define the GT4 grid positions for tomorrow.
8 tenths between Kinoshita and Santoso, 3.2 seconds between all 6 drivers who took part in that first session.
I think, again, what we're seeing there is Kinoshita's, not just his natural speed, but natural speed on a circuit he knows really well. Some circuits drivers can learn quickly, but I think you can carry on coming for decades to Suzuka, and you will still find little tweaks. And often, all it could be they've slightly resurfaced at a certain point on the circuit, and that particularly makes a difference when you've got mixed weather conditions. And as I discovered in my pathetically small and slow racing career at Donington Park, there is an airport right next door to it, and the difference as aviation fuel lands on different sorts of tarmac was my excuse for a 720, or was it a 1080 spin down the hill?
It's an excellent excuse.
But it really was remarkable. In greasy conditions, the newer circuit surface, for some reason, was worse than the other. It was far more slimy and slippery, and off you'd go. But it was just to the point where you were loading the car. But round here, it's all about technique around the turns. So let's see. First blood to BMW Team Studios. Sonaka Jukucha will take over, but it was Takayuki Kinoshita who did the job and did it very well. 2 minutes 14.686. As you can see, 8 tenths of a second faster than Setiawan Santoso. So a really impressive run from the BMW team. But Mercedes, and good to have Audi on board with Absolute Racing, and good to see Absolute making a major splash there into 3rd position on the grid. Mark Williamson, Australian racer, huge amount of experience. Great to have him back. Great to have Absolute playing in GT4 as well. A class that's just surely going to continue to grow and grow. Running separately in qualifying. This is the 3rd series of Blancpain GT Racing in Asia. This year racing under the moniker of GT World Challenge Asia, combining with GT World Challenge Americas and GT World Challenge Europe. And there is an overall title to be had at the end of the season across all those championships. Race control, they've got a lot of televisions to look at, monitors of each of the corners out around the circuit, and certainly plenty to look at. And early this morning, I think at almost every corner, but particularly turns 1 and 2, you'd see cars in the other classes finding out the circuit. There was that little river just across the entrance of turn 1, where you should be doing braking and thinking about a spot of turning. But there's a big runoff area there, the big tarmac area out and beyond the white lines that mark out the edge of the circuit, and we saw quite a few drivers going on massive lurid runs off the circuit and then sending a postcard and returning from whence they came, rejoining it at turn 2.
Well, the weather forecast for today, and as I've said, it hasn't been particularly reliable over the past few days, but the forecast is that there won't be any more rain today. But, you know, as we look up at those skies, you can see a little bit of darkness there. It's all a little bit unpredictable and very local as well. So let's see how things go.
Well, Mark Williamson passing his knowledge on in that I can't hear you, but I wave my hands technique that drivers have. He's passing it on to his Absolute Racing teammate. That's Adson Tanoto, Indonesian racer.
Actually, this time between when one driver gets out of the car and the other one steps in, a great opportunity just to pass on that little bit of experience, those several minutes that you had. There must be information that's key that you can pass on.
Yeah, and all of these drivers, if they've got their head firmly screwed onto their shoulders, would have been watching the monitors during that session just to see what it's like when you're turning through spoon at the far end of the circuit where you really want to get the power down. Is there enough grip there? Or are you just going to have the front of the car wash away, drive off the edge of the circuit, and all your speed down that lengthy straight absolutely wrecked? So it really is crucial for drivers to have the absolute up-to-date information. Yeah. That's what they're getting, as they get a download from their teammate. Not
to be underestimated, the language skills of the two drivers. If they can speak the same language, then you can pass that information on so much more easily, because it is a crucial few moments as the drivers change.
The clock keeps ticking around. We have 40 seconds until qualifying session number 2 will commence. Again, quite early out on the circuit. Craft Bamboo Racing, using all their years of experience, they're very quick at getting their car turned around. Can't go out yet, but Jean-Marc Merlin will be ready and waiting as soon as those lights at pit exit turn green. The sloping pit lane, there is the new car this weekend, Absolute Racing. Ready to go out. So second session, this defines the grid for tomorrow. Qualifying 2 for race number 2. Driver number 2. Of course, they both compete in each of the races. Driver 1 starts race 1, driver 2 starts race 2, so they both get a share to play. The race is 1 hour long, first of those this afternoon. Driver change in the middle of each of those races, between 25 minutes into the race and 35 minutes into the race. Car that's taken the first pole of the meeting, the number 81 the BMW Team Studio M4, sitting at a standstill. It was late out in first session, issued the first 5 minutes or so, the 15 minutes that were allocated, and looks to be doing the same again. And likewise, the car alongside it, the dark blue Mercedes from GTO Racing with TTR. Again, they were late out in session 1. Likewise, having the full sort of time for the debrief that Steve and I were just talking about, ready to go out in qualifying session number 2.
Nothing like the coolness and the confidence just to delay matters slightly so that you can focus on that fast lap rather than throwing many things up at the ceiling and hoping that something sticks.
Yeah, and I think also it sort of shows the confidence those drivers have, and they like to pass it on to the others. We don't need to go out early. But don't forget, in qualifying session number 1, they wanted the others to do a lap or 2 to help just dry the little bit of the moisture that was in the circuit, try and remove it. Really the best time to set your fastest flying lap is when the checkered flag is falling right at the end, when you've got a track that's drying out. You're not going to likely to set it very early on, but it looks pretty much fully dry around the circuit. Sun will come through, maybe. Look out the commentary box window, it's still pretty much battleship grey sky colour.
Yeah, not entirely hopeful for the moment anyway.
No, but I live
Could
in
be a
this
different
wonderful
story
bubble
this
of
afternoon.
optimism.
Yeah.
So again, out lap time. Number 11 have bottled it this time. They've come out earlier. They couldn't wait any longer. So Tony Fong. But again, yeah, he's going to have full 14 minutes of qualifying. That's when he came out. 15 minutes allocated. Tony sharing with Brian Lee, and Brian came out late, but again through the sweepers up towards the Degners. Just get a feel as you lean the tyres onto the edge of their shoulders, and just get a feel for how much traction there is out on the circuit. And it might be slightly more than the pictures suggest, but the drivers take a little while, build the heat into these tyres, these Pirelli tyres.
5 drivers out on track at the moment, just waiting for one more to complete the 6 in this second qualifying session of the 4.
And again, we'll be waiting for the BMW Team Studio, the M4, and it will be Tanaka Chikuchu seeing if he can make it a pole double in GT4 for the Japanese team on home ground.
This is car number 11.
Yes, it's Tony Fong winding it up towards the hairpin. That's a corner where they really get to feel how much grip there isn't. So drivers being cautious on this, their outlap. And the second driver, as I mentioned in the Absolute Racing Audi, Mark Williamson's handed over to Anderson Tenoto. Let's see what Tenoto Hay can do. Through the final corner, right-hander feeding down the start-finish straight. In terms of quick times, look at the driver of the number 77 Mercedes. Glad we've just picked him up there, because setting the pace. Craft Bamboo Racing Edgy looking super confident. The French racer Jean-Marc Merlin, fastest of anybody in Sector 1, Sector 2, Sector 3. But it's only his outlap. He's just getting going. And we'll see how quickly he can go. But obviously Jean-Marc Merlin very well placed in the championship. Second with his teammate Frank Yu. They're on 70 points. 23 behind Chikuchu and Kinoshita in the BMW after the first 4 races. The first 2 rounds started at Sepang in Malaysia and then to Chang International Circuit at Buriram in Thailand. 25 points, a race win. So there's to play for in each round, so plenty of chance to adjust their championship positions, but certainly BMW Team Studi looking confident, so confident that 4 minutes have elapsed and they have yet to come out to play. But they already have pole for race 1, this afternoon's race, and this qualifying session for driver number 2 is setting the pole for, or the grid positions in GT4 for tomorrow's race, race 2, starting late morning tomorrow. Again, first sector, fastest of all. Second sector, fastest of all. This is the story for Craft Bamboo Racing and Mercedes. Jean-Marc Merlin pressing on, just driving into the chicane right at the end of the lap, driving with the confidence of someone who's been racing and on these circuits the last couple of years, 3rd year in the championship, and has a huge amount of experience racing in his native Europe. But for Jean-Marc Merlin, so we can do 2 minutes 15.9. That's a good starting point. Don't forget pole for drivers 1 in qualifying 1 was 2 minutes 14, but that was from the BMW that really does seem to set the pace. So that first flyer from Jean-Marc Merlin is very tidy indeed. Waiting to see what the next best runner can do. Next one he looks at will be number 199, which will be Alan Yeo. Here he comes. Nowhere near the pace. Absolutely nowhere near the pace. In fact, in the first sector he was 3.5 seconds down. So he comes across the finish line 5.6 seconds down. So that first sector malaise doesn't have the confidence that Jean-Marc Merlin has. And it really showed early in the lap. The rest was tail to catch up. The BMW has now come out to play. You saw it in the background, exiting the pits.
As they come into the start-finish straight, you can see they come down the hill and they hit 3 curbs. How hard they hit those curbs is a good indication of how much they're giving it. 3 curbs. Here we are. You'll see it here. Right and then left and then right again. There's no curb hitting going on quite here, so maybe a bit more of a relaxed approach.
Well, I also think at the very end of the lap, you don't want to blow if you manage to string together some corners pretty well early on. What's the point of taking a bit of a risk at the chicane? All you can do is get it wrong. Right, second place is now in the hands of Anderson Tenoto, the 89 Audi up into second place. He's almost exactly 2 seconds down on the best that Jean-Marc Merlin has set. Number 11 coming, just looking at it now. Tony Fong, 3rd fastest. He's only just a whisker ahead of Alan Yeo. They're both 5 and a bit seconds off the pace, so they've got to start winding it up. And winding it up is what is happening with Anderson Tenoto. Looking at him in the 89 Audi, 2nd fastest, really trying to make a splash here on the debut for Absolute Racing in GT4. His teammate Mark Williamson qualified 3rd for this afternoon's race. Anderson doing a very tidy job early on, but of course, where I'm looking is the timing screen. No sector times yet for Sonaka Jukuchu in the BMW, but I expect them to be good ones. I expect them not just to be green, but to be pink. They will be fastest of all, I am sure of that. But all along,
twitch.
Yeah, twitch there from Anderson, but that's all right. Misi's pushing hard. And Anderson is no longer second fastest because Ringo Chong has collected it in number 111. And he's from the 2-team iRace win Mercedes. He's 0.8 of a second down on Jean-Marc Merlin. Waiting for Chikuchu's time to start hitting the board, though. They haven't yet. Hasn't troubled the scorers. Tenoto improving on his previous lap. He's 2.5 seconds down on the ultimate pace, but he's picking up the pace with every lap, which is what you expect and hope for a driver making their championship debut.
A lot of character in the front of that car, isn't there? I think this might be my favourite livery.
Well, we'll keep going through the course of today and tomorrow and see if it changes. And a lot of these liveries, when the sun comes out, they suddenly look totally different, but I think that might not be something we're offered. Fastest time through the speed trap, just saying, it's a BMW. It's the BMW. It's Sonaka Jukuchu winding it up. Other drivers going faster and faster. Where else are the changes coming? Jean-Marc Merlin has just improved, 2 minutes 15.437. He's taken half a second off his best, no, about 0.3 of a second actually off his best. Backing off a little bit around the rest of that. Let's see Anderson Tsunoda, he's down in third place. He's going to improve his time. Surely will he improve his position by dealing in tenths of a second? So consistent. His twitch, you spotted it earlier in the lap.
Yeah, he did give it a good run there, but not quite good enough to bump him up the charts. He did hit those curbs as he came through, so you knew he was giving it his best shot. And sure enough, that was his best of the day so far.
Very short session, 15 minutes. We've only got 6.5 minutes remaining. So where are the changes coming from? Well, the one obvious change is number 81 BMW, yet to put a fast lap in, but it's done its out lap and is now starting to wind up the pace. Will Tsunaka Chikuchu get into 2-minute 14s like his teammate did to take pole for this afternoon's race? First of the GT4 sessions in the hands of Takayuki Kinoshita. At the moment, this is sister driver Tsunaka Chikuchu, slowest of all, but that's because he hasn't put a flying lap in. All of his rivals have. So French racer Jean-Marc 1.298 seconds to the good. The rest playing catch-up. Ringo Chong, second fastest at the moment. Will he improve this lap? Yes, he does. 2 minutes 15.981. So he goes just over half a second down. Fastest driver through sector 1. Why? It's a BMW. It's being pushed very hard indeed. Tsunaka Chikuchu, number 81.
Now let's see what kind of a difference it can make. Having delayed and been cool about it, that confidence just to wait until track conditions get as good as they're going to get in the session.
Just waiting for his second split time. His first one isn't the fastest overall. It's the fastest at the moment of anyone on the track. But Jean-Marc Merlin's fighting back. 2 minutes his last lap. Within a quarter of a second of his very best. No improvement. He's still top by 0.544 of a second now over Ringo Chong. But how good is this lap going to be? A bit of curb hopping there to keep you happy, Steve. Through the chicane. The drivers will be about to oppose all of them. Maybe if not this lap, on the next lap. Tsunaka Chikuchu in the lone BMW in GT4 class, and he goes top by, well, how to do it, 0.068 of a second. I thought it might be next time around he went top, but with great economy, and maybe by dint of attacking the curbs and the chicane, I think the next lap will be faster still. 2 minutes 15.369 seconds. Merlin got in response. Is he going to try and respond? We will see. Clock still ticking, under 5 minutes remaining, but the great balance being shown there from Chikuchu as he entered the S's, looking very much on top of that BMW that looks so much smaller, don't you think? The Mercedes look really large, the Audis look small, the BMW just looks incredibly nimble, but these Mercedes very, very popular, great to drive, give the drivers confidence, which is very much what you want when you've got a customer car, a car you're selling to drivers who are getting a feel of GT racing.
Well worth Chikuchu giving it another big go, because Jean-Marc Merlin will be looking at the gap between the two, realising that it's not desperately big and there might be an opportunity for him. So very important final 4 minutes or so of this session.
What we're seeing though on this lap, the body language of the number 81 BMW is very, very aggressive. Chikuchu's put his marker down. The fact it's taken a provisional pole is a great thing, but now he's wanting to stretch his legs. He's got the banker lap in, if you will, and coming up out of the hairpin, sweeping around towards that wonderful right hand, and then eventually starts turning left. Spoon curve. Here we go, where it goes from right to left. And of course, it's Suzuka. It drops from turn in to turn out, but you don't want to be too much over the curbs. That is done with a little bit of space to spare on the way in. As soon as he gets it out of Spoon, yeah, you don't want to be going on the red stuff over there. So just very well controlled indeed. You know what? First sector, fastest of anyone. Last lap, fastest of anyone. I think there's a bit of a pattern emerging here at Tsunaka Chikuchu. I thought last lap was good, but I really felt it was his warm-up, and this is his masterpiece.
It was a lovely controlled line through those curves, wasn't it? Very nice to watch indeed.
It's great when you see a driver who's confident in the car. They've got the balance, a little bit of understeer, maybe pushed a little bit late into the chicane, but he knows way better than I do. I think we might have a driver going into the 2-minute 14s. He did 2-minute 15.369. What's this one going to be? 2 minutes 14.404. Not only pole provisionally, but faster than his teammate did. So bragging rights in the garage. That's what racing drivers like best of all.
You feel as if there was a little bit more he could perhaps have squeezed out. That last section coming through there may not have been his very best effort.
Well, good spot there because of the 3 sectors in the lap. He was fastest of anyone in Sector 1, Sector 2, but not in Sector 3. I think he thought, that thing I mentioned earlier, I don't want to ruin all that has gone before in the previous 12 turns. Let's just keep a little bit in the bank there. Oh dear. Going out wide. And rejoining the circuit. That's Alan Yeo. And he got it wrong. Going out of the chicane he would have gone onto the curbs, found they're still a little bit wet from earlier on, so however good his lap was, and you know what? He had his best first sector, his best second sector. He's got to do it all over again. 2 minutes remaining, and that lap was not a thing of beauty. He wanted a 2-minute 15 or 2-minute 16. It was a 3-minute and 1 second lap. So getting back on. Now, it's about how quickly Alan can refocus. Get the heart rate back down. No damage to the car. Check that your tyres have got grip. They haven't got gravel all over them. And continue on your way. And this car, Anderson Tenoto, is starting to push. You can just see the difference. They know these are quick-fire qualifying sessions, but for Anderson, Absolute Racing, new to the championship this weekend, really good solid job from his teammate Mark Williamson in qualifying session number 1, but Anderson's starting to lean on those tyres, see what they can offer him in return. Cautious around the hairpin though. Just checking his first sector time. No, it's not an improvement, so he's going to have to weave some magic. Remainder of the lap should actually just about get round to the start-finish line to start a further lap if he so wishes, and I would suggest that's very much the target that he would have. Raced in the Audi R8 LMS Cup last year, not much before, so a driver fresh in terms of GT experience but gaining with every lap. Now the pits look very crowded indeed. These are the GT3 runners coming out to play. It's going to be much busier out on the track, with the cars travelling way faster than GT4 runners. We know that in yesterday's practice, about 13 seconds the difference, 14 seconds between the best GT3 and the best GT4. And that's why it's particularly good that for this year they've got separate qualifying sessions, so all the runners in GT4 can actually just concentrate on getting their own best laps in without worrying about where the traffic is. Changes, are we getting changes? We can see that Jean-Marc Merlin is settled in second place.
Yeah, I think he's comfortable to settle in second. It was a super lap from Jukuchu, so Merlin looks as if he's going to be comfortable in second.
There's his car in the pit garage. Not wasting any more tyre life. Jean-Marc on the left-hand side at the back of the car. Always, you might look at him thinking he must be a British gentleman with a cloth cap on, but he's very much French. And it's been his trademark along with the beard for years and years. But for the pair of them, they're happy with life there. They've raced together for years. Frank Hugh races with great aplomb all around Asia. And they're gentlemen racers. And it's great to have them around, out to enjoy these great circuits that we enjoy. The checkered flag is out. Any late changes? Well, we've got the top 2 cars in the pits, the BMW and the number 77. Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes we just saw out on the circuit. Ringo Chong, no improvements coming his way, so I think he might as well bring that in. He's backed off through sector 1, bringing it back to the pits, just waiting to see if anybody else is going to take the checker on the track, or will they be taking the checkered flag in the pit lane. I don't think we're going to have any last moment heroics.
A little bit of a heat haze there, which is promising. The temperature climbs as the day moves on.
Well, we might have heroics on because Anderson Tenoto is still going. I thought he'd just be able to start a flying lap. He's got up to the hairpin. He just said his fastest first sector of all, but he needs to find 1.5 seconds even to go up to third place in the class. The Absolute Racing Audi. Lovely shot this week. You can see the cars being worked very, very hard indeed. Coming up towards the entrance to Spoon, a corner that just keeps on giving, but if you get it wrong, it takes away as well. But let's see, sector 2. From his point of view, it's about just keeping it clean and tidy, seeing where the grip is. It will be different this afternoon, whether it's wet or dry. It's been changeable conditions. The track looks pretty dry, but as we said from the outset, still damp patches that don't always show on the surface. And again, experience, if you've raced here in all the weather conditions, you know which parts of the circuit, where the water hangs, where the water crosses the track when the rain is coming down heavily. So still a very good middle sector. Maybe Anderson's going to complete this lap. But again, it's all about experience for Anderson and his teammate Mark Williamson. Absolute Racing joining the championship this weekend to boost the GT4 numbers. Good tidy lines. He knows Audi R8's from racing the LMS Cup. Let's see, are we going to get an improvement? Well, he has improved, but it moves him. Well, he's gained half a second on the car ahead of him. Stays in 4th place, but good experience for Anderson Tenoto. So that's it. 2 poles from 2 qualifying sessions in GT4. First for Takayuki Kinoshita. See if you can spot a similarity. Driving the BMW Team Studi M4, as is his teammate Sunako Jukuchu, who's taken pole for race number 2. Good tidy job. Race control car going around to check out conditions around the circuit, check all is good, but we only have a very short break, and then the GT3 runners will be out on the circuit. They're due out at 10:27. The time is now nearly 10:20. There it is, the second pole for BMW Team Studi. This time Sunako Jukuchu Valiant effort from Jean-Marc Merlin, but in the end, the second flyer from Jakuchu put him a full second clear. And Ringo Chong, yet another confident performance for Team iRace. Win with their Mercedes. So third place there. The Audi, new to the championship, fourth place. And then somewhat further back, never quite hooked it up today, Tony Fong. He's in fifth. And Alan Yeo, we saw him with a little bit off. So let's take a look. 2 qualifying sessions done. Let's have a look at the highlights of GT4 qualifying. Session number 1, out early on. Frank Yu getting a feel of a circuit that wasn't fully dry. It was drying, still damp patches, very heavy rain before 7 o'clock this morning. Little nervous twitches, there's not enough heat in the tyres. It was about just learning where the grip was on the track. Also out early on, trying to set a quick time, was Setewan Santoso right at the top of the time charts. Just keep waiting, as we knew, as the sister car from Team iRace.wing, Kia Chang, was out. They were looking for grip, they were looking for a clean, tidy line through the S's. New to the championship, Absolute Racing with their Audi. It's Mark Williamson, the Australian racer, who really started to set some very good times. But all along, we were waiting for BMW Team Studi to come out and play, to set a quick time. Also late out of the pits, GTO Racing with TTR. That was Brian Lee, put in some very good lap times indeed. It was about confidence with the team, with the car, knowing the circuit. That's exactly what BMW Team Studi have up their sleeve here. 2 drivers who raced the car last year know it very well indeed. And Takayuki Kinoshita got it all right and took pole position. Job was done. That's qualifying 1. He'd have to hand over the car to his teammate Tsunaka Jakuchu, but a team very much on top of its form. Great looking BMW M4 when it came to the second session, and it was certainly a chance for Anderson Tenoto to go out and get his first qualifying experience in Blancpain GT World Challenge Asia. Did a very good job indeed. Ringo Chong, confident as always, clean and tidy, and good for third position in the class. But it was Jean-Marc Merlin who really flew early on, but we knew the BMW was coming. How good a time could Jean-Marc Merlin manage? He went top, and then he was tipped off the top by this BMW, the 81. Did the job by a few tenths of a second. Then the second time around, put a full second clear to take pole position in the second of the 2 GT4 qualifying sessions. Very tidy job from BMW Team Studi. Pleasure on the pit wall, not delight. That comes when you win races, and they're hoping to do that this afternoon. Another good run there through to the finish from Addison Tenoto.
A little bit of a sweep up, keep that track nice and tidy. You'll see as you get a nice view there, there's still little damp patches, but very much off the driver's line. The driver's line is safe, but that just sort of enhances the feeling that you need to stay on it. Any little twitch, any little error, and suddenly conditions beneath your feet might just mean that you're prompted to make an even bigger error.
Yes, errors, particularly in a circuit as tough as this, become compound. One leads to another, and each one becomes all the more damaging to your cause. So a little bit, as we say, a little bit of remedy around the circuit. They're looking for anything that's been dragged on. But apart from one car going off, the 199 we saw with Kyo Chang, everyone really much... Sorry, it was Alan Yeo. Kyo drove it in the first session. Everyone pretty much stayed on the circuit, so nothing untoward dragged back on. Maybe a little bit of gravel up at the final corner, but that's been swept clear. GT3 runners lining up, about a dozen of them already lined up, looking at the red light at pit exit, waiting for the session to start at 10:27. Let's look at the big clock. It's 10:23 and a half, so it's suddenly going to get very busy indeed. And I'll just give you a little form guide. Sepang, the opening round. 2 pole positions, or pole position for both races from the Absolute Porsche, number 912, Wan Bo, followed by Dennis Olsen. And then we changed to Mercedes when we went to Thailand, to Chang International Circuit, and it was Darryl O'Young in the 99 Craft Bamboo Racing, and then his teammate, but from the other car, Alessio Picariello, in the 88 Mercedes from Craft Bamboo Racing. He took pole for race 2. We said right at the start of the broadcast that the star of the morning practice here was Alessio Picariello. He's always a star in the car, but 4.6 seconds and a little bit more clear of the rest. But it was a circuit you could possibly achieve a really quick time if you went for slicks, but it was so wet that most of them didn't really make the change. But again, that was useful knowledge. Who knows what the weather conditions are going to be either this afternoon or tomorrow morning for the second of the races. But here we are, poised for the GT3, the first of the 2 qualifying sessions, 15 minutes each with a 7-minute gap. And let's find out, are we going to have a new manufacturer to take a pole? As I said, 2 to Porsche in the opening round at Sepang, 2 to Mercedes last time out, Chang International Circuit. But now we're at a circuit with more bite, with more challenge. Suzuka one of the great circuits in the world. It's stood still in time in so many ways, which is why I love it. It's old school, and what a place to spectate. Any place that has gradient makes cars look more dynamic, and certainly if you get to watch overlooking the S's, the cars come round bottom left of our screen, they do 2 double right-handers and then turn around and come up behind the paddock through these incredible uphill S's. And it just is wonderful to see the difference between a car that's with a driver who's confident, has got the car balanced, another one who just clipped the first curb, wide on the second curb, just trying to get it back all over again. And you can just see these cars look very, very dynamic indeed, and particularly on a greasy surface.
I've witnessed some motor racing fans come to Suzuka for the first time in their lives over the past few weeks, and tremendously excited to just enter the gates and walk around the track. It's an iconic circuit, isn't it? It sparks an awful lot of joy in an awful lot of people.
Well, I always feel a racing season is a good one, but it's not a good one unless you've ticked off a race at Spa, Francorchamps, and a race at Suzuka. What have they got in common? They're old school with gradient. Please, all circuit designers, pay attention.
What do you make of the sweeping up that happens between sessions? I've spoken to some drivers who sort of viewed that with some amusement, how that works in Japan.
I think, actually, if you're here and you're marshalling, you've got to do something, haven't you? I mean, obviously, you know you're there for the driver's safety, but anything you can do to improve. If you spot a bit of gravel on your patch, you're going to remove it, because that's easier than removing a broken car that's spun off on the gravel. So I think they do a really good job, our friends in orange, all around the world, but very, very keen marshalling here in Japan. So looking down to the sea in the background, you can see the sea. You can see the coastline beyond. It's not always a given at Suzuka, and it may not be a given for the rest of today.
Yes.
The cloud is grey, but it's gradually becoming higher, which is very much a good thing, because this circuit is a real monster in the wet. I love it, though, actually.
Yeah, it's a beautiful surroundings. Lovely to drive around the area around the track as well. Actually, it's a gorgeous setting. You can see why so many people are excited to come here. And there is the iconic wheel, on which I'm sure you get a good view of just about all of the track.
You certainly do, and a fabulous funfair beyond. Right, so the first dozen cars have got out into the fast lane, and now all the others come and join them. Lights just went green at the bottom of the screen, so just waiting for number 88 to pick its way out of the pit lane. Who's that? It's Jeffrey Lee. And of course, his teammate Alessio Picariello was the driver who went 0.6 seconds faster than anybody else in wet practice this morning. They didn't practice because it was wet, they practiced because they practiced. But the car really looking good this weekend. ARN Racing and his team getting stronger and stronger. Hiroaki Nagai will do the first session, and Yuta Kamimura the second, and they've been looking very good. They were fastest in free practice yesterday. Over, round around, that's the exit of turn 2. In fact, I would suggest got it wrong out of turn 1, and that should be the 80, that could be the 55 car, actually. Let's just have a look. True on the door, true indeed. So I'm afraid Daniel Au has said Au.
55, very nice, yes. Doesn't look as if he's getting out of there either, does it?
He should be able to drive away from that. It looks like it's had a little nerf in backwards. So that out beyond that is tarmac. I mentioned it earlier, we saw the Formula 3 drivers using a lot of it, so he's actually spun across it. Let's have a look for the pink and white car. We lost it going into halfway between the two corners. That's a very unusual place to lose it, and Tyrewall did its job very well indeed. You can see it compressing. Red flag, because if anybody else wants to take a spin, the car doesn't want to move.
He's trying to get out now, isn't he? But
it's caught on the barrier. Now he's broken it clear, but I mean, I suppose the only thing that's more embarrassing than that is going off in turn 1, but I think that was turn 1.5. So for Daniel Au, very unfortunately, Craft Bamboo Racing, maybe not too much to straighten out there, but for all the drivers, look, the clock is now stopped, but it's only a 15-minute session, and a much busier track for the GT3 runners. And for some of them, they would have already seen that red flag before they'd got out of turn 2. So a little bit of frustration. 888, this is a car really interesting. 888 Racing Australia. And it's Prince Abdul Rahman Ibrahim, the Malaysian prince, and he has been really impressive in the opening round. New teammate this weekend. All season it was going to be swapped around between Jasmine Jafar and Shane Van Gisbergen, and it's the Kiwi Van Gisbergen who comes to play this weekend. Look out for that car. I reckon that is a really promising runner, and for His Royal Highness, it's a case of gaining experience, and he's been gaining it fast. Spent the winter on the simulator working really hard with Jasmine Jafar. He knew Sepang, but drove really well. I think they picked up a 5th place. I'll have to have a quick check in my records. More of a struggle on the circuit he didn't know, so Chang International, that's behind him now. Now it's a chance to experience the circuit here at Suzuka. I'm sure it's one he would have done many times on the simulator, but the simulator doesn't always simulate the bits that make it tricky, the greasy conditions. So frustrating for the drivers. A lot of them hadn't even really got out of the pits and the red flag was flown. So just to point out, Daniel Singaporean racer, got it wrong. There is 888 Racing Mercedes being wheeled back.
We thought we saw him pull away from that barrier. I think you mentioned that he might have got caught up in the barrier. It could also have looked as if his tyres were just entrenched and couldn't get out of a little rut that he'd found himself in. But we think we just saw him pull away before the cameras cut away. So,
well, let's look out. He was the third driver out of the pits, which is just immensely frustrating. So the first car out of the pit, as we mentioned, was the 88 Mercedes Craft Bambi Racing Jeffrey Lee. The second car was the silver Mercedes, the 888 one we've just seen wheeled back into the garage for the Prince, Jeffrey Ibrahim, and then Daniel Au third out of the pits, but the others got to see all of the lap. He may have done so, but delayed by just reversing it into the back into the tyre wall down at turn number 2. So he would have learned that over the curbs is not a good thing when it's still a little bit damp. The track itself is dry, but the curbs will always stay wetter for longer. They can hold more moisture. Suddenly busy in the pits. There's the wonderful Anstone Racing Mercedes, blue, red, yellow and orange splodges all over it, parking willy-nilly in front of the others. Horse vehicle coming in the background, so I haven't seen if Daniel Au in the pink white. No, that's the sister car, that's the 88 car. That's the first one out of the pits, that's Jeffrey Lee. So one of the 3 Mercedes from Craft Bamboo Racing. So frustrating for the drivers, they've just got their qualifying head on, they have to get it on all over again. Alessio Picariello just leaning in the window there to speak to his teammate Jeffrey Lee, and I think we're about to go green very soon indeed. Fast lane open, they'll want to have priority position added. Well, the prize goes to
big rush.
999, that's the Chinese team, Audi Sport Asia Team TSRT, and David Chen.
Bit of a fight for second out actually there, Bruce, as well.
It's busier, we know that. Many more runners in GT3. And effectively, they have, well, you can still see the clock, 13 minutes, 49 seconds. They've lost a minute. But all the drivers who went out, that was only 14 of them, some didn't even go out yet, have had one lap at slow speed, experiencing what the circuit is like. Doesn't necessarily give them a good picture at full speed. That they will gain now.
They got the go-ahead and they all jumped out, didn't they? 155 looks as if he's
well, that's the car that went into the barrier.
Yeah,
that's Daniel Au. They're having a look around the car. It's up on the jacks on the left-hand of the screen.
At least he got out.
Yeah. I think a little bit of gaffer tape.
Should sort that out.
It's like, giving a child a kiss when they've hurt their elbow and sending them on their way. So, who is it going to be? An Audi on top this time around? Let us find out. As I said, 2 poles to Porsche in the opening round at Sepang, 2 poles to 2 drivers, of course, in Mercedes, Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes, Chang International Circuit in Buriram in Thailand. Last time out, but this is a more prestigious pole. It's Suzuka, a feather in any driver's cap if they can take a pole here. Clock already under 13 minutes and counting going down. This is the championship leading car. Number 97, Solite Indigo Racing, Roloff Bruins, Korean racer, sharing this weekend with Patrick Niederhauser, who is a driver with a Midas touch this year, is winning all around the world, coming good. He's third drive to share that car with Roloff Bruins this season. Let's see how he fares, but certainly he's having a cracking season. So we're expecting times 2-minute 1. Maybe 2 minutes flat. That's the guidance we get from free practice. More experience. As I said, the really heavy downpour this morning will have blasted a lot of the precious rubber off the racing line.
Yeah, fastest time of the weekend is 2:01.885. So I guess that's the marker for them to look for initially. That was in free practice 2.
We will wait and we will see, but certainly drivers making space for themselves is wise. They seem to have spaced themselves out quite carefully at the front end, but sort of giving one little incident for a driver ahead, and the space you wanted to drive into could be removed. So waiting for 2 cars have done their flying lap. 999 Audi, David Chen sharing with Andre Couto. That was a car that had a spectacular demise in the opening races at was limping back to the pits in Sepang, and suddenly the back of the car was on fire, so it really gave the marshals something to think about. And certainly Andre Couto, plenty to think about. car was repaired, came out to play next time around. I think it's a car that's not had the results that it's quite due. Maybe this weekend will be where the Chinese team really starts to stretch its thing. Good looking car, that's one that certainly stands out in our coloured ball chart. All sorts of colours, but largely a sort of silver grey, green and gold with a lot of red. Have we got blue? No, I haven't got blue, maybe for the next round, but it does look very pretty indeed, and when the sun shines that really comes into itself. The livery on David Chen's car, David Wyan Chen, drivers races with all sorts of names according to market, but his racing name is David Chen. He's going better and better, it must be said, in recent years, really starting to get the results that he'd obviously hoped for when he came racing. So David Chen just set the fastest first sector of anybody. Good spot, but that's already been toppled by Roloff Bruins in the 97 Mercedes.
Good first sector, though, so we'll keep an eye on Chen as he goes around this.
Well, he knows his Audis. He was the AM champion in Audi R8 LMS Cup a couple of years ago and built on that experience and racing all around the world, not only with Audis, raced a Ferrari last year in Blancpain Asia. So this year, though, going for a car that was really popular a couple of years ago. The Audi in particular. The Mercedes has gained in numbers. The Audi has somewhat dwindled, but that could all change again. It's perception as much as anything. So, who's setting the fastest sectors around the circuit? And it's now Darrell O'Young. Oh dear, that's 75. That's the T2 Motorsports, and Greg Cho has brought the second red flag of the session. So the marshals get to do more than sweep, they get to collect. Let's have a look and see if we get a replay of what went wrong. So marshals don't mind waving flags, but they'd rather not. But so no flying lap completed, but in the gravel, the number 75 Ferrari, and not just in the gravel, some distance through the gravel. So that was a moment that clearly went very wrong. But for Darrell O'Young, there'll be frustration because he had the fastest first sector time of anybody.
Yeah, one or two drivers will be a little bit frustrated with that. They were building up some speed, some momentum. Second red flag of the session, though, is going to be very frustrating for them.
Well, it's going to mean they'll be even more bunched up for the remaining 10 minutes when they get released all over again. So at the moment, no flying laps on the board. Very, very frustrating. So Jeffrey Lee is still at the top of the time charts. He was the first one out of the pits in the first attempt. First one early out of the pits in the second attempt. And still waiting to see. We're waiting for lap times of 2 minutes flat. There's the number 911 Porsche, one of two entered by Absolute Racing. Tanat Sathian Thirikul, the Thai racer. He's starting this session, and then he'll hand over in Q2 to Philip Hamprecht, and they've had a really good season. Very, very good season indeed. Absolute Racing, as I say, doing the complicated thing. They've had a first at Sepang and a second at Buriram, but running two Audis and two Porsches and two Audis. Very complicated. Now the GT4 Audi as well. So busy team, Absolute Racing. Big all over Asia. Certainly the Porsche has become a car we had a few in the past, but their numbers definitely grown. Porsches and Mercedes growing in number. Fewer Lamborghinis than we used to have. You can see one at the top of the screen. That's the one entered from Thailand. And good to have them around. Vitana Motorsport, that's number 128. Chanswat Asavahame.
It was quite an anxious drive for the pit line, wasn't there, when they got the... There's that Lamborghini you were talking about, I think.
Sinister, isn't it?
Yes.
That's pretty mean. That's sort of like a gamer's car. I'd suggest I'll have mine in matte black, please. But
yes, I'm thinking there'll be an even more anxious dive for that line once they get the go-ahead in a moment. Time precious, no real fast laps logged. So sense of urgency will be the order of the day.
The Hub Auto Corsa Ferrari, very popular in the championship. This is the car that really has got a lot of form, ARN Racing. Great looking car. That's your favourite in terms of livery, isn't it? ARN Racing.
A nice one,
dark
yeah,
metallic, well, sort of mid-metallic red. Can't quite work out what all the white flashes are. Now, number 60. Good to have that. Another livery there. LM Corsa, new to the championship this weekend, running in the AM class. Two Japanese drivers, Kei Nakanishi and his better-known teammate Shigekatsu Wakisaka. Kei, I don't honestly know too much about, but Shigeki has been racing for a long time in all sorts of categories, but most recently in the Super GT Championship here, and brings a huge amount of experience, sort of 20 years of experience. So that will stand out on a dark day. Today is a dark day, so the black car, we will look for that, number 60, but again, can't gauge the pace, new to the championship, and we will wait and see. Don't expect Great fireworks, they'll be finding their feet, but great to have them on board this weekend. But just if you're new to Blancpain GT Racing, we run the Pro class for 2 silver ranked drivers. Then we have the Pro-Am, where you have an Am who will be a bronze, and then you can have Am-Am. So there are championships within championships. Oh, good to see the Ferrari in the background has returned from the gravel. Red on the nose and red in the face for Greg Chio, but good to see it drove back under its own steam without steam coming out of it, so that is a good thing. So it was just into the gravel, seemingly no damage done because he came in at a normal sort of pace into the pit lane. So we've got it all to do, 10 minutes remaining. And you always have to look at the bottom of your screen. We were commenting on how sinister the 128 Lamborghini looked, and unfortunately it didn't go unnoticed because it's possibly it's under investigation for possible speeding in the pit lane. That's one of those things that you can pick up penalties. It's not just about putting money in the pot. It can, in the race, lead to time at penalties and undo all those corners you've managed to cut to just shave fractions of a second off, and it's what drives team managers absolutely posse on the pit wall.
It certainly can cost dollars as well, though. You're right. If they mount up, it can be a few infractions in just one movement, really.
And the worst one of all is when a driver, it might be that driver 1 has done the drive, driver 2 has to serve the drive-through penalty, but then they speed when coming in to serve the drive-through penalty, have to come in to do another one. That's when the team manager just go particularly crazy. And
Here
again,
we go.
Whoa, it's like a cork coming out of a champagne bottle.
Not a safe place to be, is it?
Absolutely not. And certainly you'd have to say that David Chen, very, very keen to be at the front. Having the garage closest to the pit exit is a good help. Now, maybe a bit more maturity in some ways from the 918 crew. And Vutikon into Fuvasak, you'll bide his time. You go half a lap later, presumably. But it wasn't to come straight out on the track. They're waiting for the lights to go green. They're staying resolutely red. We've got the first dozen cars sitting there ready to go. And for, I suppose, redemption for the number 55 Mercedes, the car that went out at really exiting turn 1 between there and turn 2. At the start of the session, brought out the first red flag, has been able to gather breath, team check it's all straight. And the second red flag has bought it a little more time to just check everything, because we saw the car either caught in a rut, as you suggested, Steve, or possibly, as I thought, it might have been caught on the banding on the outside of the tyre wall down at turn 2. That's the 55 Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes. So 2 more minutes, so I'm just being told, 10:44 local time, the pit lane will be open. You can see the heat haze shimmering above the dozen cars waiting to come out and play. Let's hope we can have this 10 minutes of clean running, ladies and gentlemen, in the first of the 2 qualifying sessions for the GT3 runners here at Suzuka. So the 999 Audi at the front of the queue for Team TSRT.
And Daniel Owls joined the back of the queue as well, so he certainly is good to go after having backed into the barrier.
Well, he's going to go. We'll find out if he's good to go once he starts putting sensible qualifying laps on the board. And for a lot of these drivers, they hope to have 15 minutes to go and play. They've only got 10 now because nobody has put a flying lap on the board. So for some of them, this will be their 3rd out lap. But all the time, the track is drying a little bit more, a little bit more. It's still a grey day at Suzuka. Very, very heavy rain before 7 o'clock this morning. And it was still wet when they went on the circuit this morning. The hero of the show in practice, Alessio Picariello, not out in this session. He'll be driving the 88 Mercedes in session number 2. He was 4.6 seconds clear. We can see clouds. We couldn't see the sky earlier because the sky was falling on us before 7 o'clock. It was full wet, but it ended as fast as it started. Now the fact we can see the Ferris wheel, we can see the coastline down the hill from us. It's a grey day, but the fact the cloud shape keeps changing, there's a bit of a breeze, suggests we can have weather. What sort of weather we have later in the day, we cannot honestly tell you. But the weather forecast predicted rain, but they've been predicting it for the last couple of days, and it's been bright blue sky here. Until the afternoon, it gets a bit greyer in the afternoon. But today was the day the rain came. But maybe we've had all we're going to have. Hey, but what do I know?
It was treacherous driving into the circuit, never mind driving around it in that 3rd practice session. But as you say, Picariello getting quickest, but he had slicks on, and it was the very last lap that he drove that registered that fast time, 4.6 seconds quicker than anybody else. So it was a function of timing, a function of equipment choice, but certainly he'll have a lot of confidence, and we will look forward to see what he can pull out in the next session.
So bang on 10:44, off we go. Also look, not in this session, but the next session for Shane van Gisbergen in the 888 Mercedes, because he was 2nd fastest this morning. So whole gaggle of cars. Photographers, you could see, we just saw shots of them all out around the circuit. These cars very dynamic, really exciting to watch. See them moving around the circuit, and you can see the difference between right and wrong, and you can hear the difference between the manufacturers. That's one of the key points of GT3 racing. The Mercedes make the deepest, most baritone of rumbles. The Audis sound much harder. The Lamborghinis with the same V10 engine sound equally tight like a racing engine should. I think the days when we no longer hear engines in racing will probably lead to my retirement from the commentary box. It's such a visceral thing.
Between them, we've got an absolute choir. A lovely range of noises, I agree with you.
So again, we have mechanic being racing across the pit lane.
Did a good job.
It's a foreshortening image. He was nowhere near the front of that Audi. But half a dozen or so of the cars biding their time in the pit lane. The Ferrari at the top of the shot having a little bit of a check-up, because that was the one that buried itself in the gravel. That's the T2 Motorsports car, Greg Chio, getting it wrong early on. So he's got a chance to calm down. But what he doesn't have a chance is a chance for a long time on the circuit, because by the time he gets out, there may only be 8 minutes on the clock. You can see we're below 9 minutes left in the first of the 2 qualifying sessions. There's the Vincenzo Sospiri entered Lamborghini. Alex out, sharing that with Frederick Schandorf. So Alex in this first session. So keep it calm, keep it on the black stuff. Let's see what we can do. 22 cars have gone out for their outlaps. I think that's everybody out of the pits. Just waiting, no, not quite. Yes, we are all on outlaps. And here's the McLaren, the one only McLaren in the series. More, please, because they're a really spectacular car. And that looks fabulous. Certainly draws a lot of attention sitting in the pit lane. In the opening round, they still had a prototype version, and now their first factory completed model came in. Thai racer Piti Dirandakti for ABSA Motorsports driving the first session. They'll hand over to Kei Tasawa, who loves being back on home ground.
David Chen was one of the drivers who had a hot lap interrupted by that recent red flag. He's had a good start to this session, looking to get up on the board nice and early. Because
we've had the red flags, we've got most unrepresentative times at the top of the screen. 11 minutes, 12 minutes, because that included the time they were sitting in the pit lane. But what we're looking for on the screen is their sector times. We'll really see those next time around. And okay, there's the Ferrari back on the circuit, right in front of David Chen, who quite rightly was flashing his lights because Greg Chio was on his outlap, but really was just wandering around the circuit a little bit there, whereas David is winding up. This is his first qualifying lap. What he has ahead of him now is clear track. That is what every driver in this session want. But right at the start of the lap, he was a little bit limited there, getting past the blue, red and white Ferrari from T2 Motorsports. Now it's clear, but I think his best chance of a really good flyer is next time around. But you can see the difference. Now the Ferrari's picking up its pace behind, but David Chen with the full lap beneath him, under his feet. Under the bridge he goes, up towards the hairpin. There's the right-hand kick before you get there. Who is going to be setting the really quick times? They're all setting their personal best because they haven't had many chances to do that in this stop-start qualifying session. 6.5 minutes remaining. That clock is really spinning for these drivers.
Yeah, real sense of urgency now. They've got to put their best lap in quickly, and they've got to stay out of traffic at the same time.
Weather looking better all the time. Suddenly a bit of flare bouncing off the front of the cars, particularly the ones with metallic liveries, like this 999 Audi from Team TSRT. Earlier it was all looking rather grey. Now it's brightening. Certainly in terms of pace, it's brightening for all these drivers. But the qualifying session has been compromised. 2 red flags. Lights being flashed. One of the Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes in the background, 99. That's Darrell Young. He's already a pole sitter this year. Took one of the poles, the first of the 2 poles, last time out at Chang International Circuit. He's showing more pace because he's actually catching. And Roloff Bruins has set the fastest middle section of anyone. Championship leader, carrying that form into qualifying here. So, waiting for representative qualifying laps. Here they come. The first car over the start-finish line is 999, and the fact it was closed on means the car behind was faster. Darrell Young goes top now. Tanat Sati and Thirakul in the 911 Porsche goes into second place. And the 88 Mercedes, Jeffrey Lee goes third, becomes fourth. So let's not just keep going through the scrolling at the top. It's going to happen. What you need to know, Darrell Young has set the marker. 2 minutes 2.9 seconds. They will go faster. That is for sure. We've seen 2 minute 1 second laps in practice. Darrell Young has now got clearish track ahead of him. And unfortunately, someone has rearranged the furniture. A big shunt trying to work where it is. Which of the Mercedes is that? Is that not the Indigo one?
It's like buried in there, Bruce. There's no question it's not coming out.
No, 3rd red flag of the session. And it is the championship leading car. Roloff Bruins had just set the fastest sector time. You see the front of the car is actually off the ground. It's on all the. It's ripped the tyre wall away. And the tyre wall has done what it has to. Roloff is out of the car, which is good to see. So that really is a case of these deformable structures doing what they have to do. So how did it all go wrong for Roloff Bruins? Let us find out. So looking very good indeed, and wow, that is a very unusual place to go off. That is a continuation of getting it wrong out of 130R, the fastest corner on the circuit. So the rear shot there made it look as though it was down towards the chicane, but that's a case of keeping your foot in when you've gone over the curbs, and we didn't see the full incident there, but we saw the tyre wall and the deformable structures compressed did what they have to do.
Yeah, exactly.
So frustrating for the drivers, because effectively we had 10 of them got representative flying laps, but a lot of those were compromised. And top of the table, it's Darrell O'Young. Has he taken a pole? Not by default, because the clock has stopped, 5 minutes 18. We will get cars onto the circuit, but up in race control, be scratching of heads. But again, the track looked pretty dry. Patches like the curbs, and I would suggest whenever anyone goes over the curbs, and I would suggest that's what happened for Roloff Bruins, they'll find there was far less grip than they expected on the tarmac beyond. The tarmac that had been driven around before by drivers staying on the circuit. Look, it's almost sunny down in the pits.
There's clear shadow, you're right. Look, the sun is out.
Yeah, would have been dry, fully dry, but out beyond where drivers hadn't been going, that's where you suddenly find it was still damp, of lack of grip, damp track out beyond, and that caught out Roloff Bruins there, and very unfortunate. He had the fastest middle sector of anybody. He was winding it up, and he didn't complete sector 3. There's the McLaren, but like so many of the drivers, frustration. Biram Dakti, he's 22nd and slowest of the pile, but it was a case that just as you were trying to go onto a flying lap, suddenly all closed in front of you. So busy in the pits all over again. And so the mechanics running out with trying to look distinctive. There's the TSRT, that's the Chinese team. The black overalls waving for David Wyan Chen to come to the garage closest to the pits. And again, we'll see the scramble as they rush to go out again when they get the queue to go and form up at pit exit. We saw behind the 99 Mercedes, just second behind the Audi. That's fastest of all. That's Darrell O'Young's car. It was running around behind the Audi, but we saw it catching, so we knew it was going to go to top of the charts.
We saw some drivers have the luxury of a little bit of patience as they came out last time, but I'm not sure that anybody can afford to be that patient now. Not much time left in this session, and the chance to stamp your authority on it has got to come quickly. Yeah, it's not going to be 16 cars going out and 6 waiting. It's going to be 21 cars going out. Unfortunately, we're not going to include the championship leading Solar Indigo Racing Mercedes. That's the one we saw having destroyed the tyre wall, so there will be a delay unless they've got spare units to drop in place of the ones that have been ripped away. But they did their job very, very well indeed. And what this does do, yes, it makes it more complicated for the drivers, but what it does do, it continues to dry the racing line, the surface around the track, because this is the first time we've seen the sun today. Actually, even 20 minutes ago, it was only a hint. We saw the cloud shape changing, maybe rising a little bit, but right now it's helping the drivers, but they just want to be able to string together 2 flying laps. That's what they're looking for. One goes in as a banker, job done. That's my rough grid position. Now can I improve on that? And unfortunately, they haven't been offered those opportunities to really string it together. One thing I just want to pick out, just a little look at the screen. The Hub Auto Corsa Ferrari, that's the largely white one we saw in the pits before. Yuya Sakamoto, in among all that, he was fastest in Sector 1. Fastest in Sector 2 was Roloff Bruins. Didn't do him any good in Sector 3 because that was where he dropped it. With just effectively 2 corners to go. Kept his foot in, one would think, through 130R. Couldn't get back on the track. And I think maybe crossing the curbs to come back in again is where he hit the real moisture. And the car whipped away from him. We'll look for further replays in future. But it won't be a moment that was fun at all for Roloff Bruins because you're really, really at full speed. Tanat Satyanthirakul and his teammate Philip Hamprecht. Hamprecht has been going well this season all over the place, driving quickly, young man who's very focused.
Yeah, one of many drivers on works contracts, races for Porsche all around the world, but a lot of racing over here, but certainly enjoyed a great start to the season. As I said, they picked up a first and a second with a win at Sepang and a second place at Chang International, so looking very, very strong indeed, and sitting third in the championship behind Roloff Bruins, the man who's wearing the badge of shame this morning after that incident, and second place is Yuya Sakamoto on there. 63 points to 53, and then on 48 is the crew of the 911 Porsche, Satyanthirakul and Philip Hamprecht. Now in the AM class, very popular runners, Andrew McPherson and Ben Porter up from Australia. Love their racing, love their Lamborghini, and always looking for a podium finish in the AM class. Car glinting in the sunlight there, the AMAC Motorsport Lamborghini.
And isn't it nice to see the sun out now? I get the feeling that that's not going to change now for the rest of the day. Now the sun's won the battle and peeked through the clouds, it should burn off the clouds. It can happen quite quickly in this part of the world.
And the temperature, I haven't got a temperature screen up, but it will suddenly start soaring. I remember the track temperatures were very high indeed 12 months ago. Warning for car number 8, that's a ARN Racing Porsche. Hiroaki Nagai at the wheel at the moment. Warning for exceeding track limits at turn 3, and in fact has had its best lap time removed. But for most of the drivers, having their best lap time removed isn't too much of a problem as long as they can log one more, because none of them have really they've put their banker laps in. Darrell Young top in his Mercedes from the Porsche of Tanat Sathi and Thirikul.
Yeah, I expressed my hopes that the sunshine would peek through, but I have just had a look up at the sky, and as you can see for yourselves there's still pretty much 100% cloud cover, but at least we're getting shadows on the track, so the sun is it's stating its case for the rest of the day.
Well, let's see what it can deliver, and I just done a disservice there to the AMAC Motorsport crew, because I didn't notice that in the scramble as the red flag came out, or just before it came out, Ben Porter is actually not just top in AM, he's third fastest overall. He's within a second of the fastest time for Darrell Young. It might be a fleeting moment to be up at near the top end of the charts, but for Ben Porter, you grab these moments. And he'll
savour it while you can.
No more qualifying times, and then he'll start tomorrow at this afternoon's race from third position, which would be remarkable for the AM runner. But for Ben Porter, I'm sure he'll have a big smile on his face. Delivered very well indeed in this stop, start. And let's hope this stop is the last stop until we get to the end. 5 minutes and 18 seconds of this 15-minute qualifying session remaining. And we're just hoping we can have a clear run. But right now, Darrell Young has done it again. He's top of the charts. He just kept it nice and clean, but he's on top by, let's call it, a tenth of a second. It's 0.099. But again, the biggest scramble of all will be getting to pit exit, waiting for the light at the bottom right of our screen to turn from red to green, and then getting the outlap nice and tidy. Then they literally are going to have one, some of them have 2 flying laps.
I was just about to ask you, what does 5 minutes and 18 seconds represent on this
circuit? It buys you an outlap and 2 flying laps.
Right. So they've really got to go for it, haven't they? It's going to be... we've seen them now sneaking out. Oh, and he's being told off.
Yeah, back you go. Haven't had the signal yet, but it's a real scramble. That's Jouvai waiting to go out. And there is the 888 Mercedes waiting to deliver a time for Jeffrey Ibrahim.
Not sure how much joy you'll get actually just putting your foot on the front of a car there to try and stop them. There's a lot of power there, but the statement's been made, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's traffic light jockeying, isn't it? Yes. Move your foot. So, why have 15 minutes of qualifying? We can compress all the excitement into 5 minutes and 18 seconds. There are people on the Ferris wheel today. They set off in grey weather. They've got to the top and it's sunny. That's how fast it's changing.
Best view of the track, I would imagine, from up there.
Appears to be facing the wrong way, but never mind. They can see the spoon curve. Oh, what a wonderful scramble. That is an absolutely brilliant shot. And actually, in this scramble, you might be better just waiting 20 seconds and getting track space. So we're waiting another 2 minutes and 10 seconds. 11 o'clock will be the opening of the fast lane. And again, thanking the lottery that gave them the pit exit, pit garage, TSRT, the team from China, the 999 Audi sitting at pit exit. David Chen waiting to see what he can do. Keep it neat. Who's in behind? It's the number 17 Anstone Racing Mercedes, Jouvai. And just trying to look, it's one of the Absolute Racing Audis. I saw one of those parked on the barriers in the photographs as I flew in. That was Wear on Tan. And barriers again doing what they needed to do, but that's not the approved parking angle for an Audi. But again, or any particular car around the circuit. But anyhow, all very, very keen, and they absolutely have to deliver now. The pressure, the ante has really up. You can see the heat in the cockpits, the drivers wafting their doors, getting a bit of coolish air. Looks about number 4 in the queue is the Singer Plan B. 59, door flapping there, and driver on board at the moment is...
I think it is.
Bakti.
Yeah, I think it is 4.
So still another minute to go until the lights will go green. All but 2 runners, 2 of the Craft Bamboo racing cars, sitting down on the left-hand side of your screen. They're playing it cool.
Remarkable, isn't it? In the space of 4 hours, torrential rain, and then you're fanning yourself by opening and closing the door just a short time later.
The 1 minute signal being offered by the marshal there, and 1 finger raised.
It's actually closer to 40 seconds now, so get primed, get ready.
It's a racing minute. It's not a normal minute. We're not normal men and women. So, This is really going to be quick fire. Darrell Young, where is he in the queue? He's quite near the front. 99, he's third in the line, third or fourth in the line. They couldn't quite tell if there was a car in front of him with the doors closed, but he's got the best time. 2 minutes, 2.968 seconds. And that won't be good enough, surely, for pole position. But right now, it's provisional pole. And let's see what he can do. A lot of these drivers are going to trip up over each other unless they're very careful. They're going to have to sort of help themselves. You can help yourself by just being a little bit calm. Yeah, if you're at the very back of this queue, you can just hang back a little bit. It's possibly better to have only one flying lap than two if you do it in space. So the lights go green, off we go. Come on, David, get the power down. And so off goes the Audi, and the Anstone Racing Mercedes follows out. And here's the spread of manufacturers. The Porsches in there, the Lamborghinis in as well, and Ferraris too. Down the queue, there's the white one with the red flash on the middle. That's number 27. By Hub Auto Corsa, a team that really is stretching its legs around the world, and not forgetting the McLaren. Piti Bhirombhakdi, there he is, number 61, going out to play seriously. So race control has no further concerns. Look out for the number 8, the red Porsche, just bottom of our screens. That has been looking stronger and stronger.
And you talked about the glisten that the sunshine causes on some of these metallic bodies. That looks very attractive, doesn't it? Leading the pack.
Yeah, the track looking fairly uniformly dry at that point, where the sun can hit at certain points. A little bit of shading around the upper parts of the circuit won't be quite as dry. Jockeying for position there, the LM Corsa Porsche trying to gain a position on the track, but it's really better to hang back and give yourself a few seconds behind another car where you can pick your own line. Absolute Racing Porsches, the 912. This was the car that took 2 pole positions for the opening races at Sepang. Let's see what it can do this time around. At the wheel of the 912 at the moment is Yuan Bo, the Chinese racer, who has been very impressive indeed in the championship so far. The first 2 races in Malaysia and in Thailand, now here in Japan. Let's see what he can do. He's 6th fastest provisionally, but with a time that he will gladly toss into the bin, because that's 3.5 seconds away from provisional pole. He's about 3.5 seconds away from the edge of the circuit there, so some rather strange driving. Looking for grip. Pace starting to pick up. I suggest these drivers aren't being enormously intelligent because they're getting too close to each other. Driver of number 12 at the moment, this is Martin Rump. Okay, they can space out a little bit towards the very end of the lap, because the next lap is their flying lap. The time they've got to beat, 2 minutes, 2.968 seconds. That's the 99 Mercedes. That's Darrell Young. Now they're spacing out a little bit.
They're only going to get 2 shots at this, 2 fast laps, we think.
Okay. 912 did the sensible thing there. Jan Bo has actually hung back enough to give himself about 4-second buffer to go and play. And the cars that were nose to tail now spread out. 99, that's the car that has the fastest time so far. I'm not sure we'll still see that there at the end. So Darrell Young knows his Mercedes well. Yeah, suddenly the difference in the aspect of the car, twitching all over the place.
You feel a bit of anxiety.
You do. He's quite close to the car in front, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but he's run very, very wide indeed. We saw a twitch earlier in the S's, and suggest he might. Well, he's got time to do one more flyer, but this one looks needs to be aborted. I think he's pressed too hard too soon. I could be wrong. He at least has the times at the top of the chart, but apart from Sathin Thirikul in the 911 Porsche and Ben Porter in the 51 Lamborghini, no one's within 2 and a bit seconds of that time, but they're all running at the sort of pace that they ought to be able to topple that time. If you're going to be at the front end of the grid, surely you have to be the 2 minutes and 1. Yeah, Darrell Young has backed off, got the flashing lights from number 12 Martin Rump. This was the car that was sitting on the barriers in the most unusual way a couple of days ago in practice. Had the photos of shame beamed around the world, but certainly one of the front-running cars, that number 12 Audi. But again, compromise going around Darrell Young. Darrell had that wobble and then the bigger twitch. Yeah, he's backed off.
His Sector 1 time wasn't particularly good. Darrell Young, he'll have to improve on that. He'll only get one more shot at it.
Lots of the drivers really struggling for grip. We've seen them going right out to the edge of the circuit, coming up towards 130R, 130R. They're picking up the pace. This is the fastest point on the circuit now. Take a look at, if we sweep round and have the rear shot just to the right of our picture, just out of our picture, was the tyre wall that got ripped away. It caused the third of the red flags and certainly took the Indigo Racing Mercedes out of the equation. So Roloff Bruins will end up down at the bottom, surely, in the GT3 qualifying. less than a minute to go. So flying laps, 2 minutes 2.681. Martin Rump in that number 12 Audi does go top. He made the space. Now he's flashing his lights. I think it was the Anstone Racing Mercedes ahead of him. This is his second opportunity. So all these runners, looking at the clock, we've still got 40 seconds. All these drivers will get one more flying lap. So pretty much the entire field. In fact, I would suggest the entire field will get 2 flying laps. It's Martin Rump at the top from Tanat Sathin Thirikul, who's improved into second place. Darrell O'Young has slid back to third with that lap that he had before the red flags. And Vutikon Intrafuvasak in the 918 Porsche has moved to fourth. Rambo, the 912, into fifth place. Ben Porter, no improvement for him in the Lamborghini, falls from third to sixth, but he is still top in the AM class. Anybody crossing in the next 4 seconds will get one more flying lap. So I think the whole field has managed to do just that, with the exception of 910. I don't think managed to do it, which is JRM Racing Porsche, Li Chao.
Yeah, he's in the pit.
Oh, yes, he's in the pit. There we have. Thank you. Well read. I didn't get that. So Martin Rump, 2 minutes 2.681. Surely that won't be good enough. But surely Darrell O'Young, what's he doing at the start of this lap? He's down in third place overall. First sector of the lap seems tricky for drivers to improve their time. I don't know why. We've almost got no improvements in the first sector as these cars go on to their second flying lap. Let's see what happens in the mid-sector, the middle of the 3 sectors.
Difficult maintaining heat in the tyres after so many stoppages, I suppose.
Still waiting for improvements. Wambo might be the one who's going to move up the charts. He's just under a second down in fifth place overall, the 912 Porsche. There is the 912 Porsche. That checkered flag, as I mentioned, has flown. They came out to play with 5 minutes and 18 seconds. They fired out of the pit 20-odd cars, trying to make space on track, and space is very much at a premium. Nobody has yet to improve in the second sector. It's like track conditions are going away from them rather than towards them. The only person to improve is Prince of Johor, Jeffrey Ibrahim. He's down in 17th place. Who's going to be top? Is anyone going to get into 2-minute ones? I don't think so. And Martin Rump parks the car in the pits. So comes Tanat Sati and Thirikul. Very few of them finishing these laps. They decided one flying lap was all they wanted. That's why they weren't improving. Looking for change to the top. It's Rump from Sati and Thirikul. It's the number 12 Audi, top of the charts. As I said, first two pole positions went to the Porsches at Sepang. Then it was the turn of the Mercedes in Buriram in Thailand. And now, is it going to be an Audi at the top of the pile? I sort of felt they had quite a good chance this weekend. And the Estonian racer, Martin Rump, top of the pile. Who is improving? Well, it looks as though we're going to have an improvement from Wambo, but he has not improved on fifth place overall. He improved his time, but stays just a whisker under a second down on Martin Rump. And I think that is pretty much the session run. That checkered flag is flying. 55 coming across the start-finish line. That was the driver who went off right at the start. 1.5 corners into the opening lap of the first part of this session. Daniel Lau stays in 20th position out of 22. He'll be disappointed with the session. So difficult for the drivers, the stop-start nature, trying to make space on the track, trying to build the heat back into the tyres. But the driver for whom the session was the most painful experience of all was Roloff Bruins. He seemed fine. He's out of the car, but he is going to start. The championship leader will start this afternoon's race last in the GT3 class. 22nd out of the 22 GT3 runners. Only the GT4 runners in behind him. So he really will have a mountain to climb this afternoon, where caution mixed with bravado will have to be his byword.
Yeah, lots of fun if he can recover fully. We might see interesting weaving throughout the field from Bruins as he makes his way forward. Something to look out for.
Weaving in a maximum attack sort of way. So let's have a look at the timesheets at the end. Martin Rump has put the number 12 Absolute Racing Audi to the top of the pile. So a new manufacturer at the top for the first time this year, Audi. Following on in the wheel tracks of Porsche at the opening round, Mercedes at the second round. And of course his teammate Wear & Tan will be hoping to make it a double for the number 12 Audi crew when he goes out in qualifying session number 2. Best of the rest, Tanat Sathi and Thirikul, the Thai racer, so strong this year in his Porsche for Absolute Racing. At the end, 0.029 of a second in arrears. And then the Craft Bamboo Racing, Darrell O'Young, a pole sitter in Thailand. Looked good today, but got caught out. Little mistake on what was his first flying lap, and so he fell from first back to third. Vutikon Intrafuvasak, fourth fastest. Top car in the Pro-Am class was Intrafuvasak. Top car in the Am class. Brilliant job by Ben Porter. 7th overall. He will be absolutely delighted with that. Would naturally expect to be at best maybe in about 18th. So he delivered where a lot of other drivers got it wrong or were interrupted by the red flag. So Great job by the AMAC Motorsport Lamborghini crew there. Crew up from Australia. They race for fun, and by golly, it's fun when you find yourself at the sharp end. So, it was stop, it was start, but it was very dynamic. Let's take a look at the highlights. Right at the start of the session. Look out for number 55 Mercedes, minding his own business as he leaves the pits. But for Daniel Lau, it really was oops and out. That brought out the red flag. Got it wrong going through turn 1 towards turn 2, rotating. Not enough heat in the tyres, not enough grip in the track. No grip at all on the grass. So, many a time, in fact 3 times in all, we had the 999 Audi leading the group out by dint of starting by pit exit. That's where their pit garage was. And David Chen really looked to press on, but every time the drivers started to wind up towards a fast lap, something happened. It was the T2 Motorsports Ferrari getting it wrong. Embarrassing there for Greg Cheo. So they did it all over again. Look at the scramble to pit exit. 888 Mercedes actually biding its time, but the person not biding his time was Darrell Young. He went out for Craft Bamboo Racing and really put in a good lap, but was expecting to build on that, but the red flag came out again. So he sat there at the top of the time charts with that time, reckoned that when the cars got released after that particular red flag, his time was going to be beaten. It was, but he only fell to 3rd, but it was stop-start. It was about making your space in traffic, and unfortunately, this was the 3rd red flag, where Rudolf Blurins, the championship leader, got it wrong out of 130R. And this, the final flurry, everybody, and I mean everybody, charging out onto the circuit. Who was going to end up on top? Who was going to be the first qualifier? The qualifier first for race 1, pole position for race 1. The battle was on. It was about making space out on the circuit, but eventually it was the number 12 Audi that exceeded the 99 Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes. Ooh, a little bit, that's where it all went wrong for Darrell Young, but no mistakes at all. Martin Rump riding the curves, but riding them cleanly for Absolute Racing, putting the number 12 Audi on pole for the first of the 2 races here at Suzuka. Job very well done indeed. Congratulations to Martin Rump, pole position. So plenty for race control to consider. And again, the difficulties this morning provided by rain in the early hours this morning through to about 7 o'clock made conditions. The track started to dry, kept on drying, but out beyond, if you ran a little bit wide, you could get in trouble. And 3 times we had drivers getting it. The degree between success and failure, very, very small indeed. But 3 spinners, and the only driver really picking up any damage was the championship leader, no less, the Solite Indigo Racing Mercedes of Roloff Bruins. Big thump into the tyre walls, but big padded tyre walls. So we've GT3, of course, get 2 qualifying sessions, and it's their turn to go and play. Everything delayed by the red flags, but all along everything is drying out, so all well and good. And waiting to go and play again. Driver 1 out of each of the cars. Driver 2, this is the qualifying session that defines the grid for tomorrow's race. 911, first driver out, Absolute Racing, one of their 2 Porsches. Philip Hamprecht, already a winner this season. Very well placed, 3rd in the championship. And the drivers, hopefully they will all get 15 full minutes, uninterrupted minutes, in which they can have a chance to lay down their own personal performance rather than the stop-start first qualifying session that went on. A session of many bites, to the extent I almost thought we'd had both qualifying sessions. I almost confused myself. Here's the LM Corsa Porsche, new on board this weekend, Japanese racing team, with its more experienced racer, Shigekatsu Wakisaka. He will be going out, but as you can see, look, the clock at the top of the screen is counting down, and as we saw, mind you, the others did it in 5 minutes and 18 seconds. I think that's what they finally got to go and do it in, so 14 minutes, that's plenty of time. Comparatively speaking, they've got eons. Keep an eye out for the 88 car, Alessio Piccarello, who was quickest in that final practice earlier this morning in entirely different conditions, but he was the one that adjusted best of all to the wet. Here we are now, as you've said, just about an entirely dry track. Yeah, Nicole, we just saw leaving the pits was Frankie Chen Kung Fu in the number 13 Absolute Racing Audi. That's the metallic blue one. and expect good things from him. He knows the circuit very well indeed. So this looks much calmer in the first qualifying session. The number 75 Ferrari, that was one of the fallers. Now here's the AMAC Motorsport Lamborghini. That's in the hands now of Andrew McPherson. That's the Mac of AMAC, or it's the AMAC of AMAC, and he is out on the circuit in the AM class, and his teammate has got the bragging rights. He's qualified 7th for this afternoon's race. Let's see what Andrew can do. Don't expect him to be that high. That was a real case of Ben Porter making the most of the stop-start nature of the qualifying session number 1. Spoon curve. You can see the drivers going right out towards the edge. The Vincenzo Sospiri Lamborghini white with the blue and yellow flashes, weaving around, heating the tyres for Danish racer Fredrik Schandorf, a driver who's really stepping up to GT racing and putting down a good marker. Now, car to look out for, the silver Mercedes, the 888 Mercedes, Shane van Gisbergen, superstar of Australian V8 touring car racing, but no stranger, was a Blancpain champion in the Sprint Championship in Europe about 3 years ago, racing for McLaren, so does know his GT racers as well.
And they were second fastest in that third practice earlier this morning, so going well today.
2016 Carroll 59 McLaren for Shane van Gisbergen. Philip Hamprecht, the angle he's driving that car at suggests a lot of push is going on in the cockpit of the 911. He's got it very nicely balanced, finding the flow always essential, but adding that level of attack you need over the curve through the Degners. Just gets the edge of the circuit, not beyond. That is the key. Curbs always stay wet long after the circuit dries out, because of course the surface is an asphalt grey. That's dark, it dries quickly. Painted white, curbs do not. So quick times, they will be being delivered, but the good news is the drivers are being able to stretch this out lap, start their flying laps. Philip Hamprecht first in the queue in the 911. Pushing hard, but the advantage there, he's got clear track ahead of him. German racer, well, he's in the ideal position at the moment to lay it down. We know this team can be good in qualifying, good in racing too. Already a win under their belts this season. The second race at Sepang. Sepang and here at Suzuka couldn't be more different. Sepang, I call it a modern circuit, but it's been going for 20 years.
Yeah,
but it has the space that just doesn't exist here. You have to really, really string your lap together here in a much more dynamic way. So Philip Hamprecht, 2 minutes 1.566. That's by dint of having clear track and already faster than anything we saw in the qualifying session number 1.
Fastest time of the
But of
weekend.
course he's beaten immediately. Alessio Picariello, we said look out for him. Not without reason. So he goes top by a third of a second precisely. Miyaki Yokomitsu, number 17, goes third fastest for Anstone Racing. That's the blue, red, yellow and orange splodged Mercedes. Now that has been deposed, the second of the Absolute Racing Porsches. Yihong Li goes into third place. Tight at the top two, a third of a second between them, but then 8/10ths back to the 9 at 12 Porsche. Alessio Picariello, what's he going to do this time around? Waiting, he's top, 2 minutes 1.233. Ahead of Hamprecht. What's his first sector time going to be this time around? Going through early part of the lap, does he improve? Can't tell you yet, hasn't got to the sector. Not such a good lap from Hamprecht, first part of the lap. It might have been compromised by traffic, or he just backed off to do fast lap, slower lap, fast lap, that could be the case. But in the 88 Mercedes from Craft Bamboo Racing, Alessio Picariello, yeah, he's also slower. Interesting. Yeah, the best times are coming back by about a few tenths of a second, but it's on clear track, so I think it could be them just trying to work out how, on ever-changing track conditions, they can get the best out of the Pirelli tyres. Do they go better with one fast lap, one slower lap? It's about, you know, in race trim, you're racing, but in qualifying, you're just trying to think, how can I manipulate my tyres? Those black things that keep the cars off the ground, so they used to say, but they are so crucial to performance, never more so than in qualifying. The difference between getting it right and wrong can be really marked, so know how to treat the tyres. Every time there's a change in tyre compounds that Pirelli brings out, or any manufacturer will bring out, okay, time to go and talk to the team chief back in the pits. That's what you can do if you have an uninterrupted session. You You can interrupt it. You can come and say, right, I need a little less pressure, a little more pressure in my tyres, which was a luxury that we didn't really have in the previous session because they hardly ever got up to full running speed before the red flags came out again. So let's just give you the top 10 at the moment. It's Alessio Picariello in the pits. The second fastest car, Philipp Hamprecht, in the pits. Marco Holzer joining the championship this weekend in the 918 Porsche. So good to have him on board. He's third fastest at the moment, racing the car normally driven by Alexander Imperatori, who's decided he wants more work this weekend. He's competing instead in the Nürburgring 24 hours. So great to have Marco Holzer on board, long-time Porsche racer. Quite a lot of the front-running cars come into the pits. They've got the confidence to dip out, talk about it, try and sort out the setup and go out all over again. Christina Nielsen, new on board at the championship this weekend. The Danish racer done so much racing in the States with considerable success in the GTD class in the IMSA Sports Car Series. And she shares with Darrell O'Young, yet to really hit her straps. Darrell O'Young, more experienced in circuits over here in Asia, more experienced than Mercedes, but certainly Christina, let's keep an eye out for her. At the moment she's down in 16th place, but I think she put her banker lap in, but now she's caught behind the AMAC Motorsport Lamborghini of Andrew McPherson. She's quicker than it, but well, this lap is ruined because she hasn't made her way past. Now Andrew lets her out of the way, but as you can see, she's on the wrong line through the first part of the deck. He's all compromised. She's got the clear track, but the time is going to come next time around. So what's the problem? What do you do with traffic? The next Mercedes coming up behind Andrew McPherson, flashing its lights. One of the Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes. I think it's number 88. Is that 88 or is it number 55? Can't see if it's pink or red on the front wing, but if it's 88, no, he's in the pit, so it's his teammate 55. He's doing the flashing. That's Melvin Moe. Wants to get past as well. So still Alessio Picariello from Philipp Hamprecht. Hamprecht been into the pits, is now out on the track. Picariello, the Belgian racer, still sitting in the pit lane. He's got the form, he's got the confidence. Just looking at the timing screens. Support the moving images again to give us any clues about anybody who's yet to put in a really quick lap. And again, you can see Melvin Moe flashing the lights of the 55 Mercedes. It's not racing. The AMAC Motorsport Lamborghini doesn't have to get out of the way. Polite if he does, but he's staying on the track. Doesn't want his own line compromised. So, Christina Nielsen, we know this lap was compromised earlier on. She's down in the pits. Just trying to see what her lap time would be should she complete it. As
we look at Christina coming into the pits, Picariello and Hamprecht are both now on their out lap, so looking to register another quick time.
Yeah, just looking to see what the charge is when Picariello comes out. He's out, Philipp Hamprecht is out on the track. I want to see next, towards the end of the lap, what their sector time is going to be through sector 3 of the 3. 9, 10, haven't seen so much of that one as yet. Chris van der Drift, I'll tell you why we haven't seen much of it, because this is his out lap. He came out very late in the session in the CRM, sorry, the JRM Porsche, shared with Li Chao. So the Kiwi, the very talented Kiwi, really shone at Sepang in the opening round. Also competes in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo support series here, a series supporting us, so he's a very busy runner. But at the moment, no time on the board.
Oh, a spinner.
Is that going to be a clean spin? That's one for the highlights reel.
Nice.
Very nicely done. Show the cameras both sides of your car. LM Corsa, welcome to the championship. And that's their more experienced driver, Shigekatsu Wakisaka, through 130R, but he kept it on the track. So I think round of applause for Shigekatsu. That's experience and not necessarily one he wanted. Let's take a look how it all went wrong. Carrying as much speed as you dare through 130R. Clipped the curb slightly on the inside, pitched him. Yeah, the tail already had a life of its own. Round it came, but the important thing was he did the spinning on the black stuff, not the grass. Yeah,
beautiful pirouette. Just caught the curb. That was the problem, wasn't it, I think?
Good camera work too. So Melvin Moe back out of the pits, frustrated by being caught behind the Lamborghini. Now he's out on the track with one of his teammates in front of him. Looks like the 99 Mercedes. And at the moment, Christina Nielsen in the one with the green flashes, down in 17th position. No improvement. Dived into the pits.
Lots of headlight flashing, isn't there? It's quite crammed up there. Not much space for these drivers to really excel.
Well, light flashing led to maybe a loss of concentration because Melvin Moe very nearly threw it away going into turn number 1, maybe distracted by the Lamborghini tucked in behind with Frederick Schandorf. Schandorf is quicker, he's 10th fastest, but you saw a big twitch. And again, when you're in the S's and you get it wrong at one part, it really manifests itself into a much bigger problem. But certainly Melvin Moe is being very, very determined. It's only one of his teammates, and there won't be any animosity in the garage at all if he sweeps Christina Nielsen off the track, but he certainly feels more confident. Still time on the clock. I think Christina Nielsen, it's the outlap. Yeah, let him pass. Make your space. But Melvin Moe pressing on in that 55 Mercedes, just looking to see where he is. And he's actually fourth fastest at the moment, so he's one of the few that managed to slot in a decent lap. But he's on an outlap at the moment, and he's very, very ambitious. So again, looking for times. Philip Pamprecht, it is outlap with his best second sector, his best third sector, so he's building it up. So the 911 Porsche, look out, there it is.
Yeah, currently second in the timings. Those two nice sector times augur well.
Certainly do, but anything he's going to be trying now, you know full well that the 88 Mercedes of Alessio Picariello will be trying as well. Bit of traffic was that number 13 Audi up in front, but that's all right. That's Frankie Chen Kung Fu. He knows what he's doing. He's quick. Looking for that first sector time to come through from Hamprecht. Just got to wait a bit, but it could be a good one. It has to be a good one. He's got to find a third of a second if he wants pole. Pushing very hard through the first part of the Degners. Still waiting for that first sector time to come up. And in front of him, Frankie Chen Kung Fu going well. 9th fastest at the moment for him. Time improvements at the moment coming down towards the tail of the field. Chris van der Drift has gone from 21st and last up with that first flying up to 14th, but he's 1.8 seconds down. But he's got to find clear track as well. Van der Drift in the 910 Porsche. We're looking at the 911 Porsche. Great experience there, great trackman as Frankie Chen Kung Fu backs off. He could see the car behind. Philip Pamprecht on an absolute flyer, moves out of the way in the 13.
Inside the last 2 minutes now, Bruce. They've got to work hard.
That was very, very good driving from Frankie Chen Kung Fu. Maybe his fast lap is the next one around. But the news for Hamprecht isn't good news because his first sector isn't great. It's not as good as his best, nor is his second sector. So he's going to have to consider track space for next time around, up to the penultimate corner, the chicane. Bouncing the curves a little bit. Right, it's about good exit from the corners to get the sweep onto the start-finish straight. This with 1 minute and 20 seconds on the clock as he starts. He crosses the start-finish line, 1 minute 21 to be precise, actually. Okay, that lap was actually an improvement. No, Marco Holzer went faster. That's where the improvements come. So the lap was about 0.15 of a second down on his best for Philip Hamprecht. We're looking at Hamprecht, but meanwhile another Porsche driver, Marco Holzer, has moved into second place, sharing with the 918 car with Vutikon and Trafuvacak, who I think was fourth in that first session. So the car is good, the driver is good. So Marco Holzer.
It was a sterling middle sector from Holzer, the fastest of the day. That's what's propelled him up to second, splitting Picariello and Hamprecht.
Always have to look and see what's up ahead. He doesn't want to see that AMAC Motorsport Lamborghini up ahead. Lights are being flashed. Andrew McPherson, who's slowest of the group, 7.5 seconds down, moves out of the way. In fact, okay, he's ruined his own lap, but he wasn't going to find 3.5 seconds to get past the car ahead of him on the time charts. He knows he's going to be starting ahead. There's no time at the moment for, of course, the Indigo, the championship leading Mercedes, because that was the one that ended the previous session in the tyre wall, has not been recovered in time to play in this session. So for one driver, no qualifying at all, which is the second driver in the Indigo car. New on board this weekend, Patrick Niederhauser, a driver who has been delivering wins all around the world this year, and so frustration for him, but he'll just be delighted to be competing here in this Blancpain Asian Series again. Third overall last year, knows the circuit, so doesn't have to worry too much about loss of track time. It'll just be starting from 22nd in class. 918 leading the chase, improved in the first sector. Marco Holzer, not so good in the second sector. The pace setter, Alessio Picariello. The checkered flag is out. He's already in the pit lane. So confident his time was good enough. It was a third of a second before Marco Holzer got to within 0.129 of a second, and he decides time to go into the pits as well. Cannot topple Picariello, so Picariello puts his Mercedes on pole. So we've got an Audi on pole for this afternoon's race, and now we know Picariello will take the second pole. This one, though, for Craft Bamboo for Mercedes, top of the charts. Top three covered by a third of a second. Only a handful of them have taken the checkered flag. Looking to see any late improvements. One's just come from Kantasak Kusiri, gone up to fourth place in the number 59 Absolute Racing Audi. He shares with Burit Virenbakti. Any other changes coming later on? And Stone Racing Mercedes. Yoki Yokomitsu, does he improve? He's down in 9th place. He stays in 9th place. So think we're not likely to see a great number of late improvements. Vast majority of the field have taken the flag or are approaching it without any improvements on their early sectors around this lap. 59, this is the car that suddenly jumped up in the hands of Kansas Kasiri up into 4th place. So Audi really showing a good hand here, but bragging rights after Q2 for the grid for tomorrow's race. The second of the 2 races here at Suzuka goes to Alessio Picariello, a driver who is really shining. He was good last year. He looks as though he's getting even better in 2019. So for Craft Bamboo Racing, that's their 3rd pole position from 6 attempts in 2019, so they can be very pleased indeed. But good to see real mix of cars up at the top. It's a Mercedes from 2 Porsches and the Audi we're looking at now. They are the top 4 qualifiers. And three. Now, for a Belgian racer with a very Italian bloodline, you'd have thought the tracks that Alessio Picariello would have dreamt of racing on would be the likes of Monza, from where his family bloodline comes from, and Spa-Francorchamps being Belgium. But it was Suzuka he always dreamt of, and he's done quite a lot of racing over here now, and he's showing that those dreams have served him very well indeed. So another good job from Picariello, another good job from Craft Bamboo Racing, but good to see some other players working their way to the front. And well done to the drivers in Q2 for keeping the red flags at bay. Q1 was a rash of red flags. They've all learned lessons from it, but the mistakes were all small ones. Only one of them resulted in a large outcome, which was unfortunately removing the championship leading car, the Solite Indigo Racing Mercedes. Didn't finish qualifying session number 1, didn't come out at all in qualifying session number 2. So Patrick Niederhauser did not get to play. Bragging rights though, Alessio Picariello. There you have the qualifying 2 result, and on top by a 10th of a second from Marco Holzer and Philippe Hamprecht in 3rd place. So a case of Mercedes from Porsche. Great performance there from Kansas Kasiri, and the top runner in AM was the number 60 on their debut LM Corsa, Shigekatsu Wakisaka. He gave us a spin, but he also put the car at the top of the AM chart, so very well done to him, and not a bad impression at all. 12th overall, just see his name, he scrolled across the screen there, LM Corsa Porsche, number 60, top in the AM class. So, packed qualifying session, plenty of incident, and the driver I expected to be up the top, Shane van Gisbergen, down in 16th place. When it's stop and it's start, you have to make spaces on the circuit, and it can be difficult, but expect the 888 car to go forward in both races. It's a car with great pedigree. AMAC Motorsport bringing up the rear there, but a nice clean qualifying session on a nice clean track. Getting drier all the time. The sun was shining ahead of Q2. It started to become grey again, but the track conditions are very good indeed, and leading them out was Alessio Picariello, a driver with ambition. And across the 2 qualifying sessions, plenty of incident, and we saw there the T2 Motorsports Ferrari off in the gravel. That was recovered, got to fight all over again. Craft Bamboo Racing with the Mercedes always in the mix, looking very tidy here in qualifying, and Martin Rump was a driver who shone very nicely indeed to take pole in Q1. Really got that Audi hooked up beautifully, and good to have other cars in the mix, but drivers all having to get to grips with this circuit. So tricky. They had to make space for themselves in traffic, and in stop-start qualifying session number 1, that was very difficult indeed. Those that managed to do so really reaped the benefits, and it was all about making space. And then that just left the small challenge, the minor challenge of getting it right around Suzuka, a circuit that is just magnificent in the challenge that it offers the drivers. And you can see a lot of them pushing right to the edge of the circuit, having their heart rate shoot through the roof of the car, getting the car back on the grey stuff. That's what mattered. Keeping it clean, keeping it tidy, and finding space to put down your pace. Both sessions, the 99 Mercedes looking very strong indeed, both in the hands of the first session of Dalo Young and then Christina Nielsen. In fact, towards the end, Nielsen just couldn't find the space in traffic. It seemed slightly out of sorts and ended up 20th, so she's still yet to get to grip with the Mercedes, but one of her teammates, Alessio Picariello, went to the top and stayed there. And there's a driver making his debut in the series and leading. That spin didn't slow him very much at all, because Shigekatsu Wakisaka LM Corsa Ferrari ended up top in the AM class, 12th overall. Car that went very well towards the end. Marco Holzer brought him on board this weekend in the Panther AAS Motorsport Porsche, second fastest at the end. Got close to within 0.129 of a second, but pole went to Alessio Picariello. Craft Bamboo Racing Mercedes, top of the pile.
Wonderful morning for Picariello. 4.5 seconds quicker than anybody else in final practice under wet conditions, and then heads qualifying, so he will start on pole. What a super day it's been so far for the driver who, as you said earlier, dreamt of racing at this circuit and enjoys the thrill so much. It sets up to be a super afternoon for him.
Well, he's delivered and delivered in style. The race this afternoon, the grid now set, and the grids for tomorrow. So that's goodbye from us at Suzuka. Join me, Bruce Jones, and Steve Dawson for more later today.